I'm very excited to share my conversation with Steve Whelan, founder of My Tennis Coaching. Steve has over 20 years of experience as a tennis coach and more than 10 years as a coach educator, helping coaches all over the world rethink how they design learning environments. I started playing tennis a lot more after talking to Steve and applying his ideas to actually playing the game, and it's been really wonderful. It's just made it so much more fun and so much more engaging, and I've made so much more progress. So huge shout out to Steve for that and so much more. The way he frames learning in tennis gives us a clear roadmap for applying ecological dynamics across any sport. Whether you're a player, a coach, or just someone curious about how skill actually develops in the real world, I think you'll find this conversation with Steve incredibly valuable.
Over the past 5 and 6 years, been exploring ecological dynamics, ecological psychology, and now trying to change a very traditional based sport into a more contemporary sport. And as you know, that's quite difficult, my friend. Hence why I got more wrinkles now than I did 4 years ago.
How's the battle in tennis?
It's challenging. It's getting better. And I think when I first started, I can remember when I first started looking into just constraint-led approach. And I remember Googling constraint-led approach tennis. No search results whatsoever. And it was like, oh, how am I going to find anything about this? And over the past couple of years, there's more and more coaches now starting to explore. So it's getting better, but the pushback is still huge within tennis. No matter how much you hit people in the face with the science, they still believe the earth's flat. And you say, no, well, there's a lot of science to say that it's actually a sphere. No. So it's getting better, but I am jealous of sports like jiu-jitsu, soccer to a degree as well, or football as we call it here,
Sure.
Because they seem to move in such a rapid rate. And that's why I found your channel. And just seeing you have these lovely chats with very traditional based grapplers, I'm like, wow, this guy's got some guts, but also some patience as well. Because like, you can see when you're having these great conversations, I'm like, I'd love to have that in tennis. And I was thinking about this today on a dog walk. And I think a lot of it is, I don't know if it's in grappling, there's an ego thing. Like, well, I'll show you what's right and stuff. But in tennis, like I've asked people to have chats with me like you, and like, no, I don't want to talk about it. And it's like, wow, okay. I just want to chat. Like I want to chat, get different views. It's an interesting one because I came from a very traditional background as well. So I know exactly what those coaches are feeling and what they believe and what their biases and what their beliefs are. And just trying to just get someone to talk to you on camera from that field, I'm busy. No. So that's why I fell in love with your channel just for those couple of conversations. Like, wow, this guy is just great conversations and you do it in such a nice way. I'm like, I can learn a lot from this guy. Like he's got the right idea. But that's a little bit about me and a little bit my journey so far.
Yeah, super cool. I was just thinking, like, it's so funny, like, to hear coaches in different sports. Because a lot of the jiu-jitsu coaches right now, I think they're like, oh, yeah, the traditional jiu-jitsu coaches, they're so deep in their well. But like, look at baseball. I don't know if they talk about tennis so much, but the NHL here, like the USA Hockey, they've been using eco for their youth team for a long time now, I think.
Yeah.
So like there's all these areas of other sports where like there's more traction and pro teams especially, but it's sort of the grass is always greener, like everyone seems to think that it's easy for coaches in other areas. The reality is, we're all having a hard time because like, it's a big difference. It's hard to really change people's mind when they've been doing a thing for a long time and it kind of works, and they're, especially the more attached they are to their identity as an expert, and the more attached that identity as an expert is to the techniques they're teaching, then it can feel like a personal attack when and that's where people shut down. But it's funny, there's the other approach you can do if people won't talk to you at all. You can always try insulting them.
I've tried that as well, and that still doesn't get me very far. It's really interesting what you say there. Like, I've got a few friends in this space now, which is good. I've got a couple of friends in tennis who are ecological minded, and we sort of refer to those sort of traditionalists as a bit like gatekeepers now. So when we say things like basket drilling, little value, little transfer, if they've made their whole careers on that, they do take it personally.
Right.
And the way me and my friend Matt Wiggum have described it, they almost see it as an affordance. They almost see it like, well, that's my opportunity to be defensive when you say stuff like that, because it's really personal to me. And it's hard. And I know you and Cal Jones had this conversation, because when we put stuff out, people take it really personally. And it's like, it's not actually about you. Like, this post has got nothing about you, but it seems to be speaking right to your heart. And I've had a few conversations on LinkedIn with a couple of people where they believe that my post's about them. And I'm like,
wow,
it's just a generalization, but you're the exact person that I'm trying to speak to now. So it shows me it's working. But it is very personal to some people, which I find fascinating.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think the actual approach is probably just finding the people that are willing to talk. I don't know if you saw my conversation with Chris Bones at all, but like, he posted something that was like radically traditional. It was like, someone said, in one of my other videos, I was talking about like eco versus drilling, and I didn't mention like progressive resistance at all. And someone commented, they were like, "Oh, that's a straw man. Like, everyone's they're using some resistance in drilling, right?" So he's calling me out on that. And so Chris, he posts a video, I don't know, like a month after that, saying, "You should not have any resistance when you're drilling. And why would you have resistance? That's so dumb. You can't learn something with resistance." And to his great credit, because he's, a black belt, been doing this for a long time, been doing this with big names. He's quite well known. And, I left him a nice comment, and to his credit, he was like, he just called me out of the blue. He was like, I'm on the subway in Toronto, and I just like get a call from him. I'm like, what the heck? And, but yeah, he was like totally willing to have like this big, like, hour and a half conversation, and we finished that. He was like, yeah, let's do it again. And we talked again, and he was like, yeah, let's do one more. We talked again, and so there's people that are stuck in their lane, but there's always other people that are like more open-minded, even from within the traditional approach. And I think those are the people where, I mean, frankly, I think in general, just having public conversations and debates like this is really valuable for people to see both sides and start moving in a more productive direction. So in movement, where that's sort of my kind of core field, it's very interesting because, like, in jiu-jitsu, people talk about it a lot. There's all these debates, and it's really like polarized and dogmatic. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's moved so far forward so quickly, versus when I've talked about this for movement, it doesn't, like, people don't even argue with me, which I feel like is a step behind. I think the first step is we have to argue about it.
Yeah.
Because there's the step before that is, it's not even worth arguing about.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Oh, actually, no, there's nothing, like, as far as like, if you're a coach or you're learning, like, there's nothing more productive to talk about, I think, than like, why are we doing the things that we're doing, and what are we doing? So
yeah. And that's a huge point. And I put a post on LinkedIn the other day, like, I'm my own biggest critic. Like, every night I come home from coaching, it's, why did I do that? Why did I say that? And I said this to one of my critics the other week, like, when I question stuff, it's not personal. I'm just really curious, because that's how I push myself forward. And I wouldn't ask people questions that I don't ask myself. And I think that really disarms people quite a lot of the time. I don't know about other sports, but it's quite rare in tennis. From my perspective, tennis is all about ego. You don't want to show weakness to anyone, because it's such an individual sport. Again, a bit like jiu-jitsu. So everyone sort of tries to have their secret sauce, and you don't want to give the secret sauce away. And if someone questions your secret sauce, then who are they to question? And it's and I just find that really fascinating, because I mentioned before, I made a shift 6 years ago, and it just started with the question, why? Why are my players really good in practice and they fall apart in matches? Like, there has to be something going on here that I don't know about. And I blame the player, first and foremost. It must be the player's fault, not the coach. The coach is really good. And I think that honesty and that self-awareness of your own coaching, that leaves me quite vulnerable. And that's quite scary, I think, to a lot of coaches. They don't like to feel vulnerable. I'm sure you're the same. When I put stuff out on social media, people always think like, well, oh, you're just showing off by talking about all this stuff. I'm like, no, I'm just trying to make sense of it. Like, I'm trying to make sense of it, and I'll push something on because I want someone to challenge it. And I always remember when someone challenged me about the role of memory in ecological dynamics. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how memory works. But you know what? Now I'm actually going to go away and look at it and listen to some Rob Gray and stuff like that. And I think that's a big part of it. It's just for people like yourself and other practitioners and experts in this field, everyone's just so curious and everyone's just always constantly asking questions. And when you bring that to I'll call them a traditional coach, it's really strange. They're not quite sure how to take it on. And I was talking to someone the other day and I said, listen, I'm genuinely just curious about why you're doing that drill because I want to know. And they just don't know how to react. And again, you've spoke to a lot of people at this point. I don't know if any of that sort of resonates with you or not.
Definitely. I mean, my approach right now, I think the most effective approach I've had so far is, well, it's interesting because I do that. I was just talking to a ecological coach the other day and I was giving him the same thing. I was like, why are you doing that? I was like, that doesn't make sense. It should be more representative, blah, blah, blah. And it's, it's always hard, right? It's never like, it's not like, just because you're using this stuff doesn't, like now you've got it. There's got to be, for me, that's the most critical part of what good coaching is rooted in that self-awareness and that kind of critical review so that you can move forward, right? Yeah, so my approach has been like, right now, if I tell people about the science of ecological dynamics, rather than the drilling is wrong, if we start there, like they're not going to argue with me about direct perception, right? They're not like the ego isn't attached to that idea. So if we start there, so that makes sense. Okay. You're perceiving and interacting with the world around us. Great. Direct learning. Oh, we learn through experience. Can't you see that? Yeah, you see that all the time. That's not controversial, right? It's just, and that's not even like really super counter to the traditional approach, let's say. Like you still learn through experience on both sides. It's just now we have a theory that explains it without a mental representation, which is more parsimonious. It's less complicated. And then self-organization is a really cool thing, And again, you can't argue with, there's clear evidence of that happening in all sorts of different areas. So no one's going to say crystals don't self-organize. How else are you getting crystal formation? Yeah. So having that approach, I think has worked a little bit, but people were critiquing me a lot in that last video. They're like, oh, it's way too complicated, too many terms, but
that's really interesting though, isn't it? Because I get hit with that as well. And I think you and Cal Jones talked about this. I think when you first learn this methodology or whatever you want to call it, because it's so new and it's so raw, I can remember when I first started talking about it, I felt a little bit sort of let down by my coach education. I was like, why is it taking me almost 20 years for someone to mention constraints or even just sort of so when I started sort of putting stuff online originally, it sounded quite bitter and quite attacking because it was like, oh my God, basket fit drilling rubbish because this brand new theory tells me it's rubbish and you all should know all about it. And that didn't get me very far. And Cal Jones said the same thing. And I'm a bit like yourself now. I seen a post on LinkedIn today and what the coach was saying was really good. We need more better problem solvers, decision makers. They have to be able to read the game and interact. And I took your approach and sort of said, well, that's direct perception. That's called perception action coupling. Here's some links and some references. Whereas 5 years ago, it would have been, that's rubbish. What are you talking about? I think that's the journey of most ecological coaches. I think we start off with this brand new thing where we think, why has no one ever told me this? And then we shout it to the world because it's such an amazing thing and we find it so empowered and it makes our lessons better. It makes us better. And then the world doesn't want to listen. And then you get into the camps of, well, now you've got the traditional and the ecological stuff. And yeah, I'm definitely finding your approach, like you mentioned there, is a bit softer and you definitely have to open a few more doors. But it's still a work in progress because it's hard.
For sure. So let's talk about tennis. So I barely know anything about tennis. So this is like quite exciting for me. I did do, I think a few years of lessons when I was a kid. Like I have some, I can play tennis, but, functionally barely know what I'm doing. And so I don't think I can even speak much to what the traditional coaches are doing in tennis. So can we, let's get a lay of the land here. First of all, how do you see and define tennis? What is that?
I can look at it from two lenses, because I mentioned before, I've done quite a lot of different approaches in tennis. I've done a traditional coach. I've been game-based. I've been ecological. Let me look at it from a traditional base first. So if you were to speak to most tennis coaches, tennis players, tennis parents, they see tennis as a very difficult game. It's a very technical game. So to play tennis, you need to be technically really efficient and effective. And that involves lots of lessons and lots of hours and lots of repetitions. Because when you watch top tennis players, they just look perfect. They move at speed. They're able to strike the ball with power and pace and spin and keep that very small ball into a very small area, really. And when people then go and play tennis, like your experience, it's not as easy as it looks. And the amount of time I get the question, is this the same size as a professional player plays on? Yes, it's the same size court. We don't change court sizes generally. With the juniors, we will. But they can't believe that a pro player can serve at 140 mile an hour. They can't believe that a forehand can go 90 mile an hour plus, because when they go and try it, it goes 17 miles out. When people go to tennis, the first thing they want to learn is the fundamentals, like most sports, I guess. It's the techniques, it's the grips, it's the shapes, it's the stances. So when most people go to tennis lessons, that's their first experience. The coach will tell you how to hold a racket, how to stand, how to swing your racket from low to high and finish over your shoulder, what a good forehand and a good serve looks like. And it all comes down to I believe it's a misconception of tennis, because people think tennis is technical. I look at it a different lens these days. It's not technical. There's a player called Daniel Medvedev whose technique is very unorthodox. It's not pretty. And I was at Wimbledon last year and I took a video of Danny playing and I put it on Instagram and said, would anyone change his technique? And it's like 93% of coaches said yes. The guy's top 10 in the world. Like, he's getting to Grand Slam finals, but the perception of tennis is, no, it's all about having these fundamentals. So when people go to lessons, that's what they would expect. And when people came to my lessons 8 years ago, that's what I would teach you. I'll teach you the fundamentals of the game, looking at it from a ecological lens. And this is a really simple game. And Duarte, I'm not going to try and pronounce his surname.
Arujo.
Here we go. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad that I'm not trying to pronounce your surname, my friend. Yeah, but Duarte puts it really simple. Tennis is a game of putting the ball where your opponent can't get it back. That's it. That's the game. And a lot of that's lost within coaching. I make the argument you don't even need coaching to play tennis. You can just play tennis. And people get really confused by that. I go, well, what do you mean? Well, the game invites playing. Like, when you hold a racket, it's quite obvious what part of the racket you hold, the way it's shaped. Like, your hands are automatically going to go to the handle. We know that as an affordance. The ball's bouncy. And if you've got a racket in your hand, it's going to afford hitting. And guess what? There's a net. And you know you can't go through the net in tennis, so that affords going over. What do you need a coach for? Like, you can literally go and play. And people say, well, now you're saying you don't need coaching. Well, you do, because a good coach will now guide you how to play tennis and how to get the ball into those positions Duarte was talking about. And that's been the big shift in my coaching. So from teaching basics and fundamentals and techniques, when you come to my lessons now, whether or not you have never picked up a racket before, we're playing the game. I'm going to teach you how to win straight away. And I did a lesson this week with a complete beginner, because a big pushback with me, because I work with some good juniors. Yeah, you could do CLA with good players though, can't you? You can't do it with beginners. That's impossible to do it with beginners. They have to be good. Okay, I'll do it with beginners then. This beginner came on court this week. They had a little bit of experience, so they played a little bit at schools, roughly what to expect. And I just said, listen, the game's going to be different. Oh, sorry, the lesson's going to be different today. You know, why? I said, well, we're actually going to play tennis. going to play a match. And they're like, what? Oh, no, it's that easy. Like, just hit the ball away from me as much as you can. And let's just start there. And he's like, well, what about serving? Like, what do we do? Well, we just throw up and hit it. Okay. And let's go from there. And then from there, we just use constraints and we scale it and we just manipulate different things. And that's, for me, tennis is a really, really simple game, but made very complicated by coaches like myself. So I don't know if that answers your question whatsoever, but that's, I think, how tennis is seen. And I see it now in a very simplistic point of view where hit the ball, but I can't get it back.
So what are those, you talked about this a little bit, what are those fundamentals in the traditional approach to tennis? Like serving, forehand, backhand, like what?
Well, it's interesting because like the serve's arguably the most dominant shot in tennis. Like if you look at pro stats, it's the most common rally length in tennis is 1. Like if you were to chart all the points at Wimbledon, most common rally length is 1. The serve goes in, really comes back. But most tennis coaches won't coach a serve. They'll teach you a forehand first because it's your strength and it's probably a lot easier to coach apparently than the serve. So a lot of coaches will start with the forehand shot and they'll teach you to be consistent. So consistent means hitting the ball backwards and forwards with a partner. So tennis is not a consistent game, by the way. Like the average rally is 3.8. So if you're rallying past 4, you're not actually playing tennis. You're playing at tennis. There's a big difference there. So a lot of coaches will work on consistency, keeping the ball in play. And we'll do that in a way in which it's just rallying with a partner. And we call hitting rallying quite a lot. And it'll just be about not making mistakes and having good form or good technique. And we would use models. So we'd look at the best players in the world. We'd look at sort of commonalities within their movement and say, okay, well, contact point has to be in front of your shoes at waist height. Grip has to be what we call a semi-Western, where it's like a shake hands grip, but slightly to the right. And so we'd have these things, follow through over the shoulder. If you follow through over your shoulder, hit the ball deeper. So we'd have these models, but that doesn't relate to the game. When you watch Wimbledon, very rarely do players follow through over the shoulder. And I've never seen a professional tennis match where they're hitting the ball to each other and they're saying, all right, Bren, let's rally to 10 first and then we'll be competitive first, okay? But first, let's get to 10. Let's get consistent first. So it goes back to what I said before. I believe there's a misconception of what tennis really is. And that really hurts the sport because if you start playing, and you mentioned now, like obviously you played a little bit, but if you start playing and you're not consistent and you don't have good technique, then what do? You go, it's too hard, this game. And then the coach is telling you, yeah, it's really hard. You need at least 4 private lessons a week. And now you're going 4 lessons a week at £50. Yeah, I'll go and play pickleball. Hence why we're in this situation at the moment with pickleball and paddle. Or padel. But that's what the fundamentals are. And it goes back. I think it's like any sport though, like even with yourself with movement or jiu-jitsu, the basics of technique. And like I said before, I don't believe you need any basics. You can go and play straight away. Like you don't generally need to know how to play. The game invites all the stuff itself.
But Steve, what about bad habits?
The most common one I get at the moment is what about injuries? What about injuries? And it's interesting because I studied biomechanics for years because it's such a big thing, especially in a player pathway in which I'm in. And now I'm like, you've got more chance of injuring your player by forcing a model on them because the body is adapting to its action capacity or the body's just adapting to itself. You're more likely to get tennis elbow or injure a wrist by getting them to do something that they're not prepared to do and the body doesn't want to do. The body's really clever. Yeah, but what about injuries? And then you look at a lot of players and you see a lot of juniors here in the UK and they've got elbows strapped up, knees strapped up, and they're only 15, 16, in the middle of puberty. My hypothesis is, well, because you're forcing models on them, you're getting them to move in ways that their body's not designed to do. And we're looking at pro players at Wimbledon, US Open in a few weeks, and we're trying to get that model of a Federer and put it on Bren, who's 8.
Right.
Not quite the same, no offense, but it's not the same. And that's where the bad habits come in. Yeah, but injuries and stuff. But we understand it from the stuff that we've done, the research we've done. We're actually stopping injuries by allowing them to be more self-organize and to allow them to be be themselves and not be someone else.
Love it. I mean, as you know, I want to raise a few of the common arguments, because they're going to say that in the comments. So we might as well address all of them. And it's fun to have someone else say them.
Not just an echo chamber. But to be fair, that's one of the reasons why I reached out to you, because I know in a couple of your videos, the serve always comes up. Yeah, the serve in tennis, really complicated shot, biomechanically, the whole body. It has to be perfect. And I can't remember which video it was. It might have been with the Olympic guy who was...
Ferguson?
Yes, it was. And he mentioned the serve a few times. And I was like, I should send this guy a video of me serving, of a serving lesson. No biomechanics, no explicit instructions. And my players serve pretty darn well. Because again, there's a misconception that the serve has to be this really technical shot. No two players in the world serve the same. And Duarte, I quote Duarte quite a lot today, but he says himself, every serve you hit's unique. You'll never serve the same way twice, ever, because there's always some variation, whether it be in the environment or the individual themselves. And that's what sort of led me to reaching out to you and going, if you ever want to talk tennis, we can definitely touch upon that serve, because it keeps coming up. The serve's so technical. It's not a technical thing.
And so when you're saying technical, when the coaches are saying technical, traditional, really skilled, what I'm imagining they're thinking is, this has got to be really, really refined to hit all these different things. We've got to have the right grip. We've got to, throw the ball a certain height relative maybe to our height, and all of these things to hit it like the perfect sort of way and get it the perfect speed to very precisely hit a certain place on the court, right? Versus what you're describing is in a way it sounds similar, but then in another way, if you just hit the ball where the opponent isn't, it really doesn't matter how fast the ball is going, as long as they can't get to it, right? So that's the real goal. And that really can diverge pretty seriously, I would imagine.
Massively. And for me, if you look at those fundamentals, one of tennis's biggest faults, and similar to golf, is biomechanics. Video analysis, because you can slow something down, you can draw lines on it and go 90-degree elbow here and stuff like that. And it looks like you really know what you're talking about. But when you watch two players, one player serve twice in a row, that elbow is going from different degrees. And I can't remember if it was yourself or someone else that said, well, if you get any human, say, put your elbow at 90 degrees, they don't know what 90 degrees is. And they're just sort of guessing. With the way I work with the serve, and that's how I used to work, by the way. I used to video analysis, do video, slow it down, show the player, unopposed practice, spend hours doing it, but it never transferred. And this was sort of a bit of my superhero origin story. And I worked with a player, and a very good player, and he's getting ready for a big tournament. And we've got a 6-week training block before this tournament. And his serve was good, but not the greatest. So we said, okay, we're going to work on serve for 6 weeks. If we serve well at this tournament, we'll do well. So we spent 6 weeks serving, completely unopposed, with all the biomechanical wisdom that I had and video analysis and stuff like that. 6 weeks go by, this kid's got a great serve. And I mean, if you look at the start and the end, the serve is night and day. I'm such a good coach, Bren. You see, I've just done an amazing job. So, and this was 6 years ago, just before lockdown, before I turned and questioned why. So we go to the tournament, right? Kid spins for serve and spins and then elects to serve. So I'm sitting there with mum and dad and we're all smiling. And mum and dad are nudging me going, this is going to be good. This is going to be good. Double fault. Okay. It's fine. Bit nervous. Okay. Double fault. Okay. It's fine. First game. Next point, misses first serve. Second serve, sticks his bum out and just taps it over. Returner files the ball past him. Okay, loses the game, love and love.
Wow.
And I'm like, what happened? We've spent 6 weeks, 3 hours a week, nothing but serving. Just heavy serving. I've got the videos to prove how much his serve's improved. What went wrong? Because the technique we had on that last lesson before the tournament was not the technique that emerged in the match play. And the parents were going mad at me going, we've spent all this money and he's failed. And the kid's obviously distraught as well. Obviously, I blame the kid. What to do with me?
Yeah, you fell apart. I taught you the right technique.
What to do with me whatsoever?
You just had to use it, right?
Yeah, and it was that drive home, and I was like, it's not the technique, because biomechanically I'm pretty sound. It's not the tactics, because all he has to do is get the serve in. It wasn't that great of detail. Get the serve in, maybe go wide or tee. It's not the strength and conditioning, because he's got a strength and conditioning coach. So he's got throwing mechanics. Like this boy could throw a ball, a baseball or tennis ball. He could launch it. Like he had a good throwing mechanics. It must be psychology. Obviously just can't handle the pressure. And that's what then led me down to looking at psychology and finding ecological psychology. And it was the serve. And that was my superhero origin story of blaming everyone else but me. And then not looking at my unopposed practice and my biomechanics. And that's why a lot of my stuff that I've done at conferences and stuff, I've always done the serve. And people say to me, why are you doing the serve? It's really hard. I'm like, it's not. And that's one of the big misconceptions. It's actually not. And I can show you ways in which we can design a practice. And I can get you hitting really good serves very quickly just by manipulating constraints and getting you to focus externally and not internally. And that's what, again, sort of piqued my interest in that video of the Olympian, was the serve's really technical. Like, yeah, I used to believe that. I lived and breathed that for 18 years. And then when you get to these big tournaments and the kid can't serve, I may need to look at my coaching here. And that's common. And if you go to most tennis coaching lessons anywhere in the world, the serve is neglected. It's left to the last 10 minutes. And it's normally unopposed practice. And coaches, I did a conference in December, and one of the comments was, the serve's boring. It's isolated. The players standing around. It's cold. It's not very fun. I'm like, well, wait to see my presentation, because one, it's dynamic. It's unbelievably fun if you do it in the right way. And it's just changing that mindset of, again, people think it's a closed skill. I'm like, it's not. There's so much information in that environment. Your returner's position, the score, the direction of the wind, the sun. If there's a pretty girl watching, I'm serving differently. If there's no pretty girl watching, the environment shapes how I serve. It's not a closed, isolated skill. And it's something that is constantly evolving. And like Duarte says, like, you never serve twice the same way ever in your life. And once you start thinking like that, Bren, you start looking at it differently. It took a lot of pressure off me as a coach, because now I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for function. And it's more about dealing with the player rather than the serving technique. It's okay, how does my player react in this situation with the serve? One of the most common things we have in tennis is a deceleration of the racket, because you've got to get the ball in the box. If you don't get the ball in the box, you can't play, apparently. So that puts a lot of pressure on. So what happens? People decelerate. But when you decelerate, you lose all the spin. And its spin is what pulls the ball down. So when you decelerate the racket, you lose racket head speed, you lose spin, you actually make it worse. So with most beginners now, I'm like, just throw up and smack it as hard as you can. Increase that racket head speed. And I talked with Stu Armstrong on this when I was on the talent equation. Like, I'll just make the court bigger. Like, I'm like, we're not at Wimbledon, so you don't have to get in the box. Let's just make the box bigger. And then it's really interesting, because like, when you make the box bigger, they start getting the serve into the box, because the way a tennis court's shaped, the way we're shaped, it's just physics. So the ball will end up going down into the box anyway. But when you just take that pressure off the box and you make the space bigger, they start serving the ball in with a bit of pace. So that's how I've sort of shifted my lens with the serve. The players love it. And all my players love serving, which is rare in tennis, because it's normally a shot no one likes. I'm guessing if you think back to when you played, it's like,
I could never serve. That was like, I never got the hang of it, you know? That's the thing. Like, it's so, this is why, I'm so passionate about this. So many of us are so passionate about this, is because it can completely change and remodel and reshape, not just your relationship to, what you do as a coach, but what your students get out of this. in a very dramatic way, where you can go from like things in that traditional approach where like you can do such a great job of isolating the biomechanics and the technique and like what is the best technique, and you do all the film research and you look at all the angles, you draw all the arrows, right, and you film your athletes, and then you even correlate that with their strength and conditioning. You say, oh, they need more like, I don't know, like hip extension, and you train that, and you do all that stuff, and you refine their serve, and you have them drill it over and over, and they put tons of work into it, and then it can break down. And it often does in the live practice in so many of these different things. And that's such an interesting example with the tennis serve, because it does kind of seem like a closed skill, because like a lot of, I would say, disciplines with a partner, whether you're working together or opposed, like the movement pattern you do with the partner is completely different based on what they're doing. Like you cannot copy paste these movements of like, okay, I'm practicing, how I punch a bag versus like how I punch a person. Well, the person's moving, right? Jiu-jitsu moves are very dramatic. Like it really changes based on what they're doing. But you could certainly make the case that with tennis, with the serve at least, you could theoretically copy and paste that movement. The partner isn't involved yet, right? And the court isn't moving. But actually what you're saying is the partner is involved. Like there's this online perspective control of what are they doing while they're like, if we thought of, from my understanding of what you're saying, it's that we could think about it like the opponent is just there and we just need to hit a certain spot on the court. But actually, there's a lot of information going on in where are they, how are they standing, maybe where are they holding the racket, if you're Agassi, like, where's the tongue, right? Like all of these things that could tell us how well they might respond to like which different placements on the court. And we got to attune to that in real time, right? Like I would imagine it, people are moving there. From the little I know about that, feel free to jump in and correct me and say I'm completely wrong at any point.
No, you won't be, you'll be fine.
So from what I understand is like when what do you call it? The returner?
Return.
The return player, they're not just sitting there static, right? They're usually bouncing, they're shifting side to side. Like there's information in that can tell you about their responsiveness, and hence where is going to be more optimal for you to place that ball.
Yeah, massively. And there's lots of practice sort of designs I do now where I'll put the returner out of position. So if you imagine that in a traditional sense, you'll be cross court from me in the middle of the box roughly, but I'll put you in the same half as me. So I'll have like an open goal. And now what I'm trying to encourage you to do is serve out wide, because there's a huge space there. But it's interesting when you put a player in that situation, how many players miss straight away. And when you speak to them, like, what's going on? I should get it in. But if I miss, people are going to laugh at me. Okay. So that's again, so just changing the position of the returner, you think it should be easy now. Whereas the actual environment shifted, therefore the pressure on the players changed. And I'll do lots of that stuff. So I'll get you to stand in a classic return position, but put your racket on the floor. And as the returner, you could pick your racket up once I start my ball toss. So in that situation, I'm trying to encourage the server to serve into the body to jam you up. Because if I serve into the body and you're still picking the racket up, it's hopefully going to be a point for me. So I will do lots of crazy stuff like that. Like I'll get you to stand facing outside the court. I'll get you stand facing inside the court as the returner. Because I'm trying to give the server lots of different looks of different information. Because when I play now, if you're returning from me, I'm looking, are you left or right-handed? How confident you looking? Like if you're bouncing on your toes like Nadal and you're looking like you're going to kill this return, that's going to affect how I'm going to serve. If you're stiff, if you look really nervous and scared, okay, I'm going to serve right into your body. If it's 40 love up, I'm going to serve differently if I'm love 40 down. And all these things for years, I just neglected as a coach. I didn't see them as relevant. And now when I go to matches, when my players are serving, I'm not really looking at the player. I'm looking at the environment. Okay, what is it in the environment that's influencing or shaping my player? And is there something there that the players are tuned to that they shouldn't be? Or is the information in the environment that they've not noticed yet? And it's really interesting when you start working with players on this stuff, the amount of stuff they come up with is just bizarre. Like, I've noticed Bren's quite far back. That now opens up the slice serve out wide. Bren doesn't like it when I serve to his backhand at 30 all because he gets nervous and his backhand is shocking. It's stuff like that, that if I asked my players that 6 years ago, it'd be, oh, my ball toss isn't at 12 o'clock. My elbow's not at 90 degrees or...
Right. The technical focus, right?
That internal focus. Whereas now I guarantee next time you're in the UK and you come and visit me, if you speak to my players, they don't really think about internally. It's all about, they just see stuff in the environment. And more often than not, my friend, they'll see stuff that I can't see. And I'll go, oh, that's really good because I can't see it because I'm 42 and I'm in a different position to you. Like, that's really, really powerful. And that's my pushback with coaches with the closed skill. It's not closed. There's so much going on. It's that sea of information that we take for granted. Like, we don't realize that again, it's the fish in water story, isn't it? Like, we don't realize we're in water. We don't realize how rich the environment is. We just see it as this closed practice. And a lot of coaches will push back at me though, a bit like what you highlighted today. Well, if I do it in isolation, if I do it 10,000 times, it'll just happen in the match. It will just come out. And I'm like, and I use your little sort of example there of the box and punching bag. I could punch that heavy bag 10,000 times. Until I get punched in the face, everything will change. Like, it's fine. And like, I've done it myself as a player. Like, I've hit isolated serves and I've served really well. Then the match starts and that serve disappears. And you wonder why. And to me, the answer is really simple. You're human. Your behavior's changed because the environment's changed. And it's interesting. And I'm sure you've had this in multiple sports you've encountered. When you're practicing, it's one thing. But once you say, okay, now let's compete, just that word compete changes your behavior. It changes how you feel about everything, because we're all a little bit egotistic. We all like, we all love winning. We don't like losing. And just saying the word competition changes everything. And I think as a traditional coach, I never took that for granted. It was all about like that traditional view of tennis of a very technical sport. And it's a big pushback that we've heard a million times. Yeah, but if we have good technique will come good when it matters the most. And you only have to watch Wimbledon 2 weeks ago. When players are under pressure, that technique disappears very quickly because they're under pressure. They're nervous. When you're nervous, you get tight. Therefore, your body moves completely different. Your perception changes. You see less information, like, because you're in that battle mode of just survive. And people talk about flow a lot in tennis. I'm sure other sports as well. Like, for me, flow is just attunement. I'm just so in tune with everything that's going on and everything slows down. But that's when I'm in a relaxed state. If I'm nervous and anxious, I see little because I'm just looking to get out of there as quick as possible. But yeah, for me, it's the environment that's probably the most important part of my coaching now. And I see my role as less of a technical biomechanical expert and a environmental designer. And people say to me, what do you do again? Tennis coaching? You're not like doing some kind of house design? No, like, I design practice environments in the tennis court.
Yeah. It's really interesting, the competitiveness, because one of the early criticisms that ecological dynamics was getting in jiu-jitsu was like, why there's no champions? Why are there no champions? And the reality is, and of course this is like a selection, but there's so many logical errors in that line of thought, right? But one of the things I said to someone, like, if in the traditional approach, coaches were just doing drilling and they weren't doing sparring, and then here we are doing sparring all the time, it would be insane. Like, we would, in 3 months, you'd be crushing people that have trained for 10 years. I talked to, it was actually was kind of horrible, but I talked to a kind of like potential student or someone that is familiar with some of my work a while back, and he told me he had practiced some martial arts. He literally said the coach did the opposite of everything you've been talking about, like very traditional, very isolated, very repetitive, out of context, right? And he said he'd been practicing for like 10 years. He said, oh yeah, someone could come in, and if they were athletic, after like 3 months of practice, they would be able to beat me. It's like, oh my, like, that's horrible. This is horrible, horrible. So in jiu-jitsu, like, it's really not like that. So the status quo for like what is world championship level skill in jiu-jitsu is really, really high. It's not something that you can just, apply ecological approach and like within 3 months or a year or even like 2-3 years that now you're beating black belt world champions. It's going to take, even if you're doing things right and well, it's going to take, at least 5, 6, 7 years plus to like really start seeing some super high level skill. And one of the main things I attribute that to is the competitiveness. Because there's the traditional schools where they're not that competitive and they're terrible, right? But there's the traditional schools where they're extremely competitive. They are doing everything possible to achieve, world championship result. Like this is like the direction of their careers, their lives, right? And you've got collections of like whole groups of people that are all like that. And what I've noticed that's really interesting is, so most of their practice is much less representative, right? Because they're isolating technical details, techniques, fundamentals. But when they do the sparring, because the guys are all so competitive, I think it's actually much more representative of competition than even ecological gyms that the guys are just not that competitive. Because it's just like we're going at a lower intensity that's less representative that like what you're saying, there really is a magnitude of difference of like, okay, here's where we are. We're kind of trying hard versus this is a competition. My life depends and my salary depends on potentially this next point, right? That's huge, right? And we typically just think about that as, oh, this is like a robustness of the skill that, oh, if that motor program is just, installed deeply enough that you can now recall that under pressure. But, our perspective is this is a different thing. Like, how do we interface with that pressure as another constraint? How do we work with that? Right? Because there's disadvantages of that. There's also advantages of that. You're going to have more adrenaline. You're going to be able to push a lot harder, more sympathetic drive, right? You're going to be able to hit higher velocities and more power and like all these potential. This is why we perform better under pressure, right? Like the body is evolved this way for a reason, but you have to be working with that to some extent to know how to take advantage of.
Oh, massively. And then there's a couple of things that just resonate with me as you're talking. I do have some jiu-jitsu experience, a little bit.
Nice.
And I'll tell you my jiu-jitsu experience because it resonates as you're saying. I went to a world famous gym, but I won't mention the name, in Liverpool. A lot of top MMA fighters come out of this gym. And I went for a private lesson with the head coach because I love UFC. I love combat sports. It really is one of my hobbies. So I went for this private lesson. I treated myself for my birthday and he was showing me these moves and he was just lying there. Okay, this is an armbar. That's a Kimura, but he's just lying there. And now I grew up in quite a tough neighborhood and we played lots of WWF wrestling and we boxed. And I'm like, at least try and stop me. And he was like, oh, no. I'll hurt you. I'll say, you don't have to hurt me. Don't put me to sleep on lesson 1. At least play and like resist me because like you said about my competitive edge inside me, I have to compete. Whether I'm bowling with the kids or Monopoly, I've got to compete. That's what sets me a little bit different. And it was interesting because he was like, oh, I'll get one of the other white belts to roll with you. And it was amazing. And he was like, well, how do you know that's a guard? I'm like, well, I grew up wrestling with my mates on the floor. I've got 4 younger sisters and I was always the dominant one. Like, I'm definitely getting to full mount with my sisters. Come on. And it was weird because it's like something he never like thought about before. And that's a high level UFC MMA gym. And it was like, he didn't want to take the training wheels off me. And I was like, no, because that's before I even knew about ecological psychology or ecological dynamics. It was boring him just lying there as I put this really bad armbar on him and he just pretended to tap, even though I was doing no effect on him whatsoever. I'm like, I'm paying you money for this. And I guess, and you'll be able to tell me, I guess maybe that's one of the reasons why there's a lot of traditional views in jiu-jitsu of, you'll get hurt. You'll get hurt. If you don't know the moves, you'll get hurt. Whereas I almost looked at it, well, I need to know what slightly being uncomfortable feels like. I need to know what like being in a tough situation feels like, rather than you just lying there. And I think part of that is that competitive edge. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that, because obviously you're a lot more deeper in that world and 2 private lessons that I had.
Yeah, no, I've been thinking about this since I talked to Chris Bones.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if a really simple way to describe it to people, to just describe the direction change of the perspective, is you're coaching to, can you do the move in this like different context,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in jiu-jitsu, MMA, it's, can you do the movement with no resistance? And then we coach you with details to like do it better. So can you get the tap faster? I don't know, like, or generally it's like, we want it to look better. We want it to look more like the thing that we want to see. But it's in this different context of no resistance. And one big thing we have with ecological dynamics is just see those as completely different things,
Mm-hmm.
because they are. Like,
Yeah.
I wonder if coaches just thought of, how do you coach if everything is based on what happens live with full resistance? Like if you even if you had that traditional mindset of like, okay, we want to get details, and I think really letting go of the form and focusing on the function is a huge point.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder, even if you had that, even if you were thinking about form, but you focus on how it works in the live practice, that would just get so much farther. Because then you would see so obviously that the techniques and the technical details aren't working, right? And then it really has to be, okay, how are we going to modify the constraints? And yeah, we can give you a detail or some cues here or there. But when we have that focus, we also start seeing, yeah, those details aren't working so well, right? Because you can't do that live, because there's so much information coming from your partner that if you're trying to do the detail that I told you, well, that doesn't work anymore, right?
And that sort of ties me into the second part. And from a tennis context, then I always look at, okay, what does the game demand at your level? So if you're a complete beginner, what does the game demand for your level today? And it's a phrase you hear a lot within coaching of meet the players where they're at. Well, I truly do. Like, I will look at what you have today. I'm not looking at what I want you to have tomorrow, because you might not come back tomorrow. So what's the point? And I think with a lot of tennis coaching, especially in my early years, I'd almost be trying to future-proof a future that never happened. So I'd look at you and go, okay, in 6 months, we're going to be here. In 6 years, you're going to be here. Well, 6 months, you're not playing no more. You're playing pickleball. So what was I actually preparing you for? So now it's like, when you come back to the UK and you walk on court with me, it's okay, well, where you are today, let's make you the best of what you have today. And let's look at the level you're playing at. So let's say you've got rigid technique. We know it as degrees of freedom. Like, everything just comes up and you're jabbing the ball around. Okay, well, how can we win points with that? How can we win points with that? Like, how can we start moving the ball away from me? And I did it with the player I mentioned before, this adult beginner. Okay, let's start off with, okay, can you try and get the ball away from me? Okay, have you tried getting the ball away from me by sort of trying to explore the tram lines being in? Okay, let's make the court bigger. Can you find a different movement solution? So I'm trying to free up those degrees of freedom But I'm not trying to sort of teach you anything fancy. I'm not looking at form. I'm looking at, okay, what are you doing with the ball? Like at the minute, I'm standing still because you're hitting the ball to me. Can you just get me to move? Okay, now I'm moving. Have you noticed that my backhand's not very good? Like, I'm not as good on that side. Oh, yeah, okay. Have you noticed that I'm really bad at moving forwards? Oh, okay. Through the hour, I'm just getting you to play the game at your level, but also at the level that you're going to go back to the club with. Because if you're going to go back to the club and play one of your friends, you generally would pick people in and around your skill level, unless you're nuts and you think you can play at the top level. So therefore, when I play against you, I play like you. So I'll watch how you interact with the ball and I'll mimic you. Same grip, same awkward movement, same speed. And then I'll start stretching you a little bit to try and see if, okay, now can I improve the skill? But that's how I work. And what I find in that situation, and I mentioned before at the start of the recording, we're just going to play tennis. I make it competitive straight away. There's none of this, let's warm up. No. Okay. I'm going to hit the ball in. I'm going to try and beat you. And what I've found since I've started using that approach, and I use it with all ages. So even with like 4-year-olds, if it's on the floor, we're still competitive. Everybody loves competing. Everyone loves playing sport. I know it's really strange and it's really weird because at the end of each session, I'm not just saying it, look at me, I'm a great coach, but they go, oh, I love that. And I always ask them, what do you love? I love that we play tennis. And that's because we play points. And I'll hide the teaching, I'll hide the stuff within constraints. And they just get a feel like, oh, I can actually play a game. Because I'm not comparing them to what good looks like. I'm not saying, well, this is how Federer hits a forehand. And I seen a great clip on Instagram this week of a coach in Australia. He's got an adult beginner on one half and Federer on the other. And he's comparing the two. And I'm like, that's so night and day. And that's one of the reasons we're in the rut we're in with tennis, because if there's any comparison, it's you at minute 1 and you at minute 60. And if I can show you at minute 60 that you've got a little bit better, then I've done my job. And if you come away and you've enjoyed it. And for me, that competitiveness, like you mentioned before, that's the reason why we play sport. That's the reason why we love sport so much. That's why we watch so much sport. And I've never met anyone who comes to tennis and goes, oh, I hate competing, unless it's been made to be a fear. And I always say it's like spiders. You're not born with a fear of spiders. It's given to you because someone tells you spiders are scary. And there's a great clip on Instagram, which I'll send you, of these kids in preschool and they bring in a load of snakes. Have you seen it?
No.
So
wait, maybe, actually, maybe. Yeah.
So they're in a preschool and these snakes are just let loose and these kids are pulling the snakes. One kid starts biting the snake and I'm scared of snakes. It's one of my worst phobias. But for me, it's like, because they don't know they're scary. They've no idea they're just interacting. So therefore, when people come to sports, whether it be jiu-jitsu, tennis, football, hockey, they're not afraid of competition until it's made this big, scary thing of you've got to have good technique to compete. And the amount of times I hear that in tennis, it's scary. And there's a girl, got to be careful what you say, don't give it too away. There's a girl I used to work with at a club level and she wasn't coached by me, but she wants to be on my team. And I spoke to that and said, well, she's not really competing. I've looked at her competition, number of matches played, and she's not really competed. Oh, no, we're not ready for competition yet. Okay. How many hours coaching you do in a week? 6 hours of coaching and you're not competing. You're never going to be ready for competition. Because again, the mindset is we need to get the fundamentals, the techniques right, and then we can compete. Whereas what I'm trying to push with the stuff I'm doing is you can compete from day one. Like there's nothing, and what's really crazy is everyone loves competing. That's, again, goes back to what I said before, that's why we love sports so much. So yeah, there's my 2 cents on competitiveness and a competitor.
It's so good. So I did a podcast with my friend, Josh Beam. And so he's a really amazing guy. So he was like a war veteran and then some crazy stuff happened, came out, taught himself how to code, started jiu-jitsu, started competing a lot. He became like the most active competitor at like blue belt. He did an absurd number of competitions and then started doing YouTube. And now is like a very, he'll be one of the biggest YouTubers in jiu-jitsu pretty soon and much wider, not long after that, honestly. And so we were talking about like his approach to learning skill. And what was really just coming up over and over was he's just throwing himself into these situations where he has to like functionally actualize something. Like he has to do the skill that he needs to learn. And then guess what? He learns the skill, So like when he was learning to code, he taught himself how to code. This is crazy. Like he would make little things like, I need to make a button, and he'd figure out how to make a button. And then he learned to code by going on this forum, Stack Overflow, and he would answer people's questions. Because like someone would ask a question, and then he'd figure out, how do I do that?
Yeah.
Right. And then the cool thing is when you give a wrong answer, there's some like logical thing of like the fastest way to get a right answer is to give a wrong answer. Someone's going to jump in and correct you. So, that worked really well. He was working at PayPal, right? And then with YouTube, same thing. He was like doing a lot of these videos. He did, I think if I had to analyze it, where I would say he gained the most skill was probably pretty early. He said there was a thing he was doing on Instagram where he was making another video every day. And each day he had to improve something. He had to improve one aspect of something that he did the day before. It's like, okay, well, you're actualizing the outcome, right? It's not just like, like tinker with this thing, in the like shied away corner where no one can see it. It's you're posting it. People are going to criticize, right? But in that criticism is going to be your biggest areas for improvement generally. And then you can learn from that pretty quickly because someone's pointed it out to you. Now you can do another one. And you can also see what things are working. And competition is the same way. You're going to see what works for you. You're going to see where you're going to lose and how you're going to lose. And if you don't compete, you don't get that feedback, that information. And it is so tough. And I've always been so big on the same idea, like start competing early. It doesn't matter. Like just go do it. And there really are people that like, they'll shock you, and even if they don't, now they have experience. So something I did with Josh and another friend, Seth, we went out to Texas and Josh and I did our first sumo tournament with no experience at all. Yes. Right? Yeah. We showed up Friday night. And I was like, Seth, like, teach us some, it was like 10 o'clock. I was like, Seth, can we please practice a little bit? So he shows us some stuff and I was like, don't show us any techniques, like give us all tasks, like what's the outcome we want to do? Okay. And then me and Josh would run it. And I won 6 matches. I think he won 4, because sumo is like a very, if ecological, if you have a spectrum of like very ecologically consistent to like very traditional, sumo is way over there. So a lot of those guys, like when they practice, they're doing all these like shikos where they're just lifting legs and they're doing these things they're not even working with a partner, like let alone a partner that's resisting. So for us to come in and then like get some experience actually against resistance, even if it's 30 minutes, and then immediately get competition experience of like, these guys are going on. My second match was the national champion in my weight class, so it's like, there's some experience. My last match was the heavyweight world champion, it's like that gets you a lot of experience and information and like how that all works. But it was funny. I went back to a local sumo club and some months later I was like, let me see this, let's try practice. And I beat everyone. Every single round. I don't think I lost a single round. It was wild. And like, granted, those guys weren't super competitive at all, but because they'd been doing such traditional and isolated and like low intensity practice, and as little experience, I literally had an hour and a half of total sumo experience. But like, that's enough where some of those guys were doing sumo for a year or 2 or more. but they hadn't actually had any competition experience, and they'd have very little, if any, like high intensity practice experience.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's such a big thing.
For those who want to go deeper and see more how I design tasks, I've created a comprehensive online course based on my master's research. While these games I've shared here are the best fundamentals that I could cram in this documentary, the full course already contains over 4 hours of carefully designed tasks and sparring footage covering every major area of BJJ, from close guard to entanglements, from standing to submissions, so you can develop a comprehensive grappling skill set and learn firsthand how the ecological approach can be applied skillfully. The games in the course are more refined than what I could show here. They've been developed and tested more as I've learned more reading and training every day. Each task builds on the previous ones with clear win conditions and scaling options for different skill levels. It's essentially everything I've learned about applying ecological dynamics to grappling, structured so you can either train with a partner, small group, or use it as a complete curriculum template. You can find it through the link in the description below.
I think you found your calling as a world sumo champion, to be honest. I think you need to start putting some weight on.
Well, so what happened, I gave up my chances when I told that guy. So I'm friends with Seth and Edo, that's his name, the national champ. I started telling them all about ecological dynamics. That's when I gave up my chance of winning. I gave away
You gave away the secret sauce.
I was like, I'm honestly, they're going to Worlds. I'm not going to make a thing out of it, so. But yeah, like it makes an enormous difference depending on how traditional and how isolated those traditional people are. Especially in traditional martial arts, you really get into places where, you're doing Tai Chi and Wing Chun movements. And if you're never fighting, you don't, 10 years of practice could mean nothing in an actual fight.
It's crazy. And you get that a lot in tennis where people will have, like that girl, 6 hours or so a week and she's never competed. It's like, well, why are you practicing? I don't quite, for me as a competitor, that makes no sense. But you only have to look at the most successful tennis players. Just look at their match count. And one of the big pushbacks we get in tennis is, yeah, well, if you look at maybe the Spanish in tennis of world renowned as some of the best coaches in the world. Well, if you look at a lot of their practice, it's all isolated, basket drilling, drop feeding. So they drop the ball and the player hits it. But what we don't see is the amount of opposed practice they do. So generally in Spain, you'll do like an hour of basket drilling, which they call suffering, which for me doesn't sound any fun whatsoever. But then the rest of the day,
can you explain that in more detail? I'm not really.
Oh, so basket drill is obviously you get a basket of balls, and generally in Spain they'll do what we call hand feed. So I'll stand right next to you and I'll gently drop the ball and then you'll hit it. And in Spain, they'll do like 6 or 8 in a row. And you're just constantly hitting the balls, ball after ball. It's all unopposed. So there's no opponent. And you're working on your technique, basically. And you'll do that for an hour. And you'll hit thousands of balls in this hour. The Spanish call it suffering because it's high intensity. It's lots of volume. You hit so many balls that you feel sick. But after that hour, you play tennis all afternoon. You play matches. And then at the weekend, you'll play matches. And at the minute, and I've said to a few people, like, this would be a great research paper. Like, if we look at a player from Spain or Russia or some of those other countries who are really big on traditional methods, USA as well. But if you look at the amount of practice hours they do, I would guarantee the unopposed, isolated practices is a small percentage. But in tennis, that's seen where the learning's done. And my theory, and this is definitely my opinion, because that's where the coach is shouting. That's where you're getting the instructions. That's where the intensity is. It looks like there's loads going on. It looks like learning's taking place. And my friend Matt Wiggin calls it the illusion of learning. Spin as many plates so we can create this illusion that the coach is really good. But then when you look at the hours these players put on the match court, their match count's off the chart. Like, they're competing all the time. So I always then push the question back, well, where's the real learning taking place? Is it in the suffering hour or is it in the environment-rich match play? I guarantee it's in the environment-rich match play. But obviously there's no evidence to show that because as you know, it's very hard to prove that a method works for a world number one or a world champion because there's so many variables in play with their development and the ecosystem of their training, it's really tough. But that's a big pushback in tennis. Well, yeah, but if you look at Yannick Sinner, who won Wimbledon 2 weeks ago, a lot of his practice is it's unopposed practice. It's basket drilling. But that's, to me, that's not where he's learning. That's not where he's learning stuff. He's doing it because he's always done it, because it's safe and it's comfortable. And for me, I look at it and go, there's no value there. I did a YouTube video on it. Like, there's no value. He's world number one. He's wasting his time. Just stay in bed. You're getting nothing from that practice. Just stay in bed. You're probably better just resting than wasting your time hitting 50 balls from a basket. But the perception of that's where learning's done. And I think that's a real powerful pull. And I know our friend Stu Armstrong calls it, it's like a drug, because it looks really good. And it looks like there's lots of learning going on. When you get into the match play, it's messy and it's chaotic and there's loads of errors and loads of mistakes. It doesn't look as appealing. But like you said, Dad, that's where the information is. And you learn how to sumo wrestling, not by doing drills, by putting yourself against world champion. You're a lot braver than I am. You're a lot braver. I don't think I would get in. Once I heard national champion, world champion, I've got an injury. Yeah, my hamstrings, it's not, it's a bit tight. I best leave this one out. But again, you put yourself in those situations, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. Would you say, with your knowledge of attunement, that just gave you a different perspective of that sumo arena? Whereas if you would have done it, I don't know, before your ecological journey, would you have behaved different?
As far as like how I would design my own training, or like how I would...
So when you got into that situation, you did an hour, did you say an hour of just practice? So when you found yourself in that competitive environment, did the fact that you're ecologically aware, attuned, did that change your behavior? Whereas if you would have done that 10, 15 years ago, before ecological dynamics, ecological psychology, would you behave differently? Would you sort of just faltered and got pushed out the arena quite quick?
Yeah, well, I'm not entirely sure I understand. I'll take a stab at it and you tell me if I'm
go for it.
in the wrong direction. But so for one thing, from even a few, if it was like, I think I started this about 2 years ago. So August 2023.
Mm-hmm.
But pretty much any time before that, I would have been really focused on, okay, what are the techniques I need to learn, right? Give me a technique I need to learn, or what's the best technique for sumo, right? And or what are the details for that? And then I would try to practice that, and then I would try to integrate it into a match, right? And frankly, I don't think I would have been super interested in really, really trying something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's one of the things that really worked to my advantage was I have a lot of experience in grappling. And so moving around another person, or like having another body that's resisting what I'm trying to do, I'm very comfortable with. Mm-hmm. What worked against me was I was very not comfortable. I didn't know how to use the belt that they've got. In jiu-jitsu, I don't do a lot of belt grips when I do work with the gi. Mm-hmm. And the belt they have in sumo is it's a huge thing versus the jiu-jitsu belts in judo. They're very small. So that was very different. But that also worked out well, especially because I'd been doing, the ecological approach, and like we'd manipulated a lot of the constraints with how I've done the standing and wrestling stuff. But for instance, I know Josh had done some stuff before, like just before we actually did the thing where mm-hmm. he just had, him and a partner, and they had a belt on, and they're trying to push each other out of a circle. And like that is a totally different thing that I wish I had more practice with, like before doing that. And something I've noticed in general that we don't learn in jiu-jitsu. In wrestling, they've got a ring, and you can kind of get points by pushing the other guy out. In judo, you can't push the other guy out, but you can get them to the edge, and then if they step out, you get a point. Mm-hmm. Or not like quite a point, but you get, something. Yeah, but in jiu-jitsu, if you go out, you just reset in the middle. So we never have learned or cared about that, like controlled the space, which I think is very important. Does that sort of answer your question?
Yeah, I think it was more about the attunement, and I think the part you said really well was like you're comfortable with that other person being quite close. So I
Yeah.
feel quite familiar, even though maybe the environment is slightly different. There was that sort of that continuity or the commonality of the resistance, because it's a big thing within my sport of people saying, well, you can't just play tennis, you can't just play. But then but I always, a bit like what you said, but you do play other sports, whether that be a sort of a team sport like football or soccer or hockey. Like, you do understand that there's an opposition and you don't want the ball to go to the opposition. Like, so there's still similar things there that you can use. You don't always, again, for me, a big misconception with my sport and guessing other sports is people believe that we start from scratch. Like, you start from zero. I'm like, no, like even a 4-year-old doesn't start from zero. And this is where I get into the fundamental debate. I'm like, well, they've already got fundamentals. What do you mean? Well, they can walk, they can run, they can move their arms. Like, to me, they're fundamentals.
They can grasp a racket.
They can grasp a racket. Like, that, to me, they are the fundamentals. And a lot of people, when they first play tennis, goes back to our early conversation, is, oh no, I need to learn the basics. The basics are already there. Like, you do have an understanding of the game, even if you've never seen it before, because you are aware of a sport that maybe involve a ball. You are aware of a competitive element, even if you're in a preschool, like if you're playing with friends, you play tag or whatever, you know that there's movement involved and there's information there. So I'm just interested, for someone who went to a brand new sport, did you take that prior knowledge of other things that you did into that environment? Because I believe you do. I think we always adapt. And even my upbringing, I played loads of different sports growing up. And I always thought that I could play any sport, really. A bit like you're saying, no, give me an hour. Tell me what the basic of the game is. Like, how do I win? Okay. And now just let me go out and try and find a way. Goes back to the jiu-jitsu lesson that I had. Well, just tell me how I win. Oh, I don't fall asleep. Okay. I'll try my best not to fall asleep. It's okay. Didn't quite succeed on that one. But for me, like, they're the fundamentals that we should be looking at. Like, what's the basic of the game? That's why I sort of described to you before, but tennis, just get the ball away from me. That's the game. You don't need to know any more about that. And let's start from there. And yeah, I was just interested with you going into a different environment that you've never been in before. Did you lean heavy on that stuff? And then did like ecological dynamics help? Because I'm guessing in that situation, you are aware of different affordances where if you're just focusing on technique, all you're thinking about is not getting pushed over, I guess.
Yeah. And I mean, sumo is great because it's like such a simple sport.
Yeah.
The very basics are push them out of the circle, make them touch the floor.
Brilliant.
But like the whole thing with fundamentals is like these behaviors emerge for a functional purpose, right? There's fundamentals. Okay, there's fundamentals of a serve. Why? Well, because we're trying to put the ball where the other guy isn't. But are we focusing on putting the ball where the other guy can't get to it? Or are we focused on the fundamentals of the serve because we think that will help? Like, those two aren't the same. And what ecological dynamics gives us, what the CLA gives us, is a way to work directly on the function without having to focus on the intermediary movement pattern, you know? And sometimes that's a little bit better, and sometimes it's dramatically better.
Yeah. Massively. Like, for me, at the minute, most of my work is in and around intention and attention. Like, your intention drives everything. So rather than thinking about how you're moving, just try and jam your opponent. So we talked before about the serve. Like, if I make you put the racket down, okay, the affordance is to go into the body. Clear intention. Okay, now where's your attention? Look at your opponent. How quick is Bren from getting his hands to his racket? Now, can you find a movement solution to make sure he doesn't pick his racket up? And when you do that stuff with players of all ages, one, it's really fun because it's a game. And even when you do it, I did it with a retired adult the other day, and he was laughing like a kid because it was so fun. Because we almost lose that element that, you know what, tennis is meant to be fun. You are meant to enjoy this. It's not meant to be suffering, as maybe my Spanish friends may call it. But then when you have a clear intention, the body just sorts itself out. And when I say that to coaches, because I obviously coach coaches, people think it's some kind of Jedi mind trick. No, it's not. Like, intention is really important. And the way I describe it to coaches, there's two stories I tell. I say, well, you're at home and you're hungry. What do you do? Well, I eat. Well, how do you know to eat? Because I feel hungry. Well, what do? Do you just sit there and does the food just magically appear? No, I go looking for it. Oh, you go looking for it. Where'd you go looking for it? In the kitchen. Whereabouts? In the fridge. What you look for? Oh, I love a chocolate bar. That's intention. Like, it doesn't magically happen. You don't need to know exactly where the fridge is, because your body just works it out and it drives itself. And when I talk about attention with kids, I did this the other week with my kids, because they were really struggling what attention means. I said, well, yesterday when you went home from school, how many red cars did you see? What? How many red cars did you see? None. Why? So I wasn't looking for red cars. Okay. Tonight when you go home, count how many red cars you see. Come back next day or a couple of days after. Bren, just tell me how many red cars. 6. Ah, you've seen 6. Why? Because I was looking for them. That's attention. And intention was to look for the red cars. When we play tennis, if the intention is to get the ball away from me, that's going to then guide. I know I'm speaking to the converted here. That's going to drive your attention. Therefore, you start seeing it. And unless that's clear, things don't just magically happen. And that's what annoys me sometimes when I get sort of hit with a stick. Or you just play games. You just play games and you just expect the game to be the teacher. No. It's really, really clear intention with my games. And when players have that clear intention, like I mentioned about the retired guy before, it makes the serve really, really effective, because they're not worried about the technique or the fundamentals. They're just trying to beat me. And the Jedi mind trick works because they start to find solutions, and the racket head speeds up and the racket starts going back into what we class as a traditional position, because that's the way the body functions. And the body's, again, really clever. And I think sometimes we don't give the body system enough credit. And someone who obviously works in movement, you know how clever the human system is.
Wild. It's wild. I mean, I know that I don't know how clever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is something that used to really bother me with biochemistry, and kind of the reason I just went a whole different direction was we get so deep, like the scientists get so deep in the, like, this one protein, this one pathway, this one part of this one protein. And I think doctors as well they kind of like hyperfixate on where the body breaks down, because like that's who you're working with. Is like people, you're not working with healthy people, you're working with people that come in, they're about to die, or they could die, or something happened that's wrong, and how do you help them get back, right? So they see that over and over, and they get this confirmation bias or selection bias that really, I think, drives them to think about the body as this fragile system, when the reality is, like, that is so obvious when you look at the biochemistry at all, is the enormous amount of complexity that, like, even one protein, like, to understand one protein, I think is still, like, really a little bit beyond science right now, honestly, beyond where we're at right now. Because, okay, you can say, okay, here's the genes, right? Here's this sequence of amino acids. Okay, it's going to fold up. Already, like, what? Like, already, we know it's going to fold up, and we can say, okay, we can crystallize it, and we can say, oh, here's this structure. We could crystallize it. We shoot an X-ray at it. We get a diffraction pattern. We do some crazy Fourier transform, some math, and we get a structure back, and we do some more math. And okay. But now we have a static picture of just one structure, right? And the reality that we know very clearly is, like, these proteins have different structures that have different functions, and they're actually constantly changing very quickly. And those different structures each have different functions with different other proteins in different places. And that's all dynamic and adaptable, and it changes every single moment, of every single day. So there's this enormous amount of complexity where we break down at just like how the dynamics of the structure of a single protein even, right? Or, forget about the going in real depth from, transcription to translation, like all the different things. Oh yeah. So, DNA to RNA to protein. Well, okay, but let's go in more depth. And now we've got to talk about epigenetics and all these different, there's upregulation and downregulation, things that it is. And that's just the tiniest sliver of what the tiniest section of every single cell in your body does all the time, right? Like, it's so wild. And so yeah, I really agree that I think we lose sight of how amazing the human body is so often. And we focus on like the tiny little things we can find of where it breaks down rather than all the amazing, amazing things it does every day just for us to breathe, or see. Like what, breaking down just perception is an absurd thing, like, it's
Well, I'm pretty sure you've done this because I know I do it quite often, where you just sit there and you just look at the world and go, this is just crazy. Like, how am I perceiving all this information all at once? And you start having that, like, where do I sit in the universe kind of thought?
Sure.
It is just amazing what we do and we take for granted every single day. And what you described there about the science, like, I can relate that to tennis coaching, because you miss a shot and they'll go all the way down to the very minute detail. And I did a presentation in the summer where I took a picture of a match. It's a snapshot. And I just pull out a little tiny section of a racket and I put it on the screen. I said to the coaches, what's that? Everyone goes, no idea. That's a tennis racket. But now look at it in the context of a match. And that's what you do as coaches. You take that very tiny bit. And guess what? That's a snapshot of a milli, whatever second. That changes. And you're trying to fix that. Why are you wasting your time? Like, we go down, like you're saying about the proteins, we go down to such a minute detail, but that is just a moment in time. The next millisecond, that whole thing's changed again. And I think for me, from a tennis coaching point of view, I'll leave the physics and stuff and the chemistry to you. We don't trust the player enough to sort it out. And I think there's a peer pressure in tennis coaching that I should have the answers. So if you miss a shot, I should know why. And years ago, I'd just make something up. Oh, your contact point is a little bit late, keep your racket closed. Now I'm like, I don't know why you missed. Why did you miss? What is it? What was it in the environment that maybe influenced you? What did you see? Why did you go down the line? Because you'll probably have a better understanding than I will. And that freaks coaches out there. Because coaches go, what, you don't give me the answer? Well, I don't know. I can maybe ask questions and guide and get better understanding. But the player sees the world through their own lens. I don't. And I think from a coaching point of view, we go down to that minute detail, but we don't trust the human enough to sort it out themselves. We almost feel like we have to give an answer. And for me, from my coaching now, I find it a lot easier to coach. I don't need to have stock answers. If you ask me a question, I don't know. Let's find out.
Yeah.
Let's go and explore. Now I'm excited because, like, I don't know. And I think that's definitely shifted my perspective of coaching as well, because I don't feel as much pressure on me, again, from working in the environment with competitive players where ratings are important and rankings are important. It's not about the minute details no more. It's about the person in front of me. And I put a lot of faith in them to solve it out. I'm sure if we do it enough times and you have enough errors, you'll recalibrate and you'll soon find an answer. It may take us a while, but hey, listen, learning's non-linear. Like, I say it to my players all the time, you're not going to learn in a lesson. It doesn't work that way. Like, it may take a couple of goes, it may take 6 weeks, but I do feel that there's a lack of faith sometimes with just how clever we are as human systems. And I think, yeah, I definitely think there's a lack of trust sometimes. And it's called a dynamical system for a reason. There's so much going on that we don't understand, but do we really need to understand it all? Or do we just need to have an idea of how we interact with the world? And I think that's what really changed my perspective of my life, really, never just my coaching life. I just see the world differently now, rather than worrying about the protons and the proteins and whatever you said. I just nodded along going like I really understood what you were talking about, but I got the gist of it. But it's just that trust, isn't it? Like, it's a dynamical system. And I think one of the biggest problems I had in my early coaching career was the metaphor approach of trying to simplify it. Oh, we just process it. We just process it in the brain, and the brain remembers. And that then shapes my behavior as a coach. Because if I believe the brain processes, that affects my practice design. It affects how I communicate with you. It definitely affects the words I use, and it affects the stories I tell you. Oh, I just need more reps, Bren. More reps, because you're processing it. Whereas now I've got a different lens, a different language. It just changed how I see coaching as well.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention a little bit, like you were talking about how people are having so much fun playing tennis and doing the sessions with you. And that's something that I've really noticed with the ecological approach. And so like a lot of people that they'll say things like, I don't like sports. I don't do sports. But I think that's very rarely the case. And I think what's much more often is people are they're told to do a certain pattern, and they're told that the swing has to look this way. And then, you need to do this with your elbows, and now you're doing it wrong. And it's boring. One, it's boring to repetitively practice something that's decoupled from like a information-rich environment.
Mm-hmm.
And then two, now you're being told that you're doing it wrong and you suck. And that's hard. That's tough, and that can be boring, and it sucks on both ends, because it's like, okay, the people that are less disciplined, that they just jump out of the sport and they're like, screw tennis. I can't do that. I'm bad at it.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that are super disciplined are like, all right, I'm going to suck it up, and I'm just going to do my basket drills and, do 1,000 serves every day. And then, 5 years later, they still suck. And that's a tragedy. As coaches, that's a tragedy when you have disciplined athletes that are willing to do anything you tell them to do, and then you give them something where they're not going to really improve in a functional way that they want.
Yeah, there's loads. And I think for me, I did a workshop yesterday. So I did what we call a level 1 coach qualification here. So it's the first day of these coaches' journey. And we talked about this, funny enough. And I said, well, imagine going into work or college or university on Monday morning, and your lecturer or your boss tells you suck at everything. Everything you do is wrong. Like, everything you do is wrong. There's a better way of doing it, and this is the way you're going to do it. How long would you stay? 10 minutes, 20 minutes? Oh yeah, but we do that in tennis lessons, don't we? Because we have this mindset of what right looks like. And that's what puts a lot of players off. But it's weird because a lot of parents, and I've had this pushback since I moved to ecological dynamics, a lot of parents will see how I work, and it is different to other coaches. And it's weird in my environment because I'll maybe have 3 or 4 coaches on courts next to me. So you've got me playing these fun games and crazy games, and you got the basket feeding coaches. I've got a Spanish guy next to me as well who's making kids suffer and lots of running. True story. And parents always have this conversation with me. Steve, my kid loves your lessons. They're so much fun. But when can we learn the techniques? I'm like, oh, you just absolutely killed it, because the kids love the session because it's fun. And then I have to go down the whole, listen, the techniques are being taught. Like, it's not like I'm just playing games. Like, this is what I'm doing. And I make a big point of sort of trying to educate parents as well. But the kids love it because it is fun, because there's no right way to play. And the way I started to think about this a few years ago is I started to look at computer games. Okay, so what computer games do kids love playing in 2019, whatever it was at the time? Minecraft, Roblox, okay, sandbox games. There's no right or wrong way to play. There's no rules. You create your own world. You make your own choices. There's no adult telling you. There's no manual of these books. Not like back in my day, Sonic the Hedgehog, where there's a manual telling you how to play, and it was linear. If you look at any modern computer game that kids play now, it's sandbox. It's open world. And I was like, that's what I need to make my lessons like. Because that's what kids engage with. So those kids who maybe don't like sport, I guarantee they're playing PlayStation or Xbox at home. So can I make my tennis court that sandbox world? So we have different types of tennis balls. We have like soft balls that are red, orange and green, and they're different compressions. So different bounce, different speeds. Pick what you want. Bren, pick whatever ball you want. Try the red one, try the green one, try both. Like, you want to play on a big court today? Fine, let's do it. You want to do this today? Fine, let's do it. And when we create that sandbox of a world as coaches, kids buy into it. And you're right, I think kids love sport. And it goes back to what I said before about the retired guy. We all love sport. We all love competition. Even Minecraft is a competition. roadblocks as a competition. Like it's in I believe our DNA that we are just competitive. The world in which you've had in tennis of a traditional view of that's right, that's wrong. You suck at tennis. You're never going to be any good. You're never going to be a Wimbledon champion. Tennis is really hard. Like, stop telling kids tennis is hard. If someone says to me, listen, we're going to do this chemistry lesson with Bren and it's really hard, I'm going to go, oh, okay, not for me. I'll pass. But oh no, this is really good. It's really, and like for me, I use the word challenge an awful lot. Oh, I've got a challenge for you today. Like like a challenge rather than me going, I've got a drill for you.
Yeah.
Right. Another drill. Or this is called suffering because the Spanish do it. Oh, great. Sounds really good. So I think just the terminology and going back to, like I said before, just meeting the players where they're at. If we're working with kids, make it a kid-friendly world. And I said this on a workshop again, on an under 8 workshop. Like, we're entering their world. They're not entering ours. And we're lucky to be a part of their world because we can design it. And I think when we go in with, this is our world, this is how things are done, that's where you have that disconnect. And I get your point. Like, there's some absolute maniacs who just want to drill because they'll see a top player drilling and they'll have that drive of, I'll do what they're doing. I'll do whatever it takes. And they'll do it and they'll still won't make it because they don't see the other stuff going in and around it. And some people like drilling. I say, if you like drilling, great. Go and drill. Go and suffer. It's what you really like, then great. But I didn't, I've got lots of stories. I'm sorry. But I've got a great story. So I coach this group of under 8 kids. And obviously we work with them in an ecological way. And at the end of term, it's normally what we call competition week where they play matches. So I said to my co-coach, let's do an experiment because I'm a bit of a backyard scientist these days. All we're going to do, we're going to go in, we're going to say to the kids, there's the court, there's the equipment, do what you want. Do what you want. We're here. Like, we're not going to make sure it's safe, but go and do what you want. Just go off and you can do whatever you want. Okay. Guess what every kid did? Play tennis. They played points. When they were playing, it was really interesting because in some scenarios you had an experienced player with a less experienced player. They started to change constraints. They started to say, well, you can have 2 touches now. Or how about we use this ball because it's a bit slower. These are kids and there's no instruction here from me or my co-coach. We're just sitting there watching back. He's scared, my co-coach, because he's like, this is going to be chaotic. They all played matches. Not a single kid went, you know what? I'm going to throw you the ball and you're going to hit it back. And we're going to do that 50 times. They all went and played matches. And what's really interesting about that, the parents didn't like it. The parents complained that it was unstructured. There was no commands from me. And I was like, that's probably the best lesson I've ever done in my life because they had autonomy. It was safe. And they just all went and played tennis and none of them decided to drill. None of them said, I'm going to practice my serve on its own. The best bit for me was just changing the constraints and just manipulating the game because they want it to be fair. They don't want to win 10-0 because they have compassion, they have empathy with each other and they change it. And I think sometimes as coaches, goes back to what I said before, but the body, like we almost lose respect for how clever kids are. Just sit back and watch kids play and they come up with some amazing ideas. I go, oh, that's good. I'll definitely use that on the video. And yeah, for me, that's powerful, I think. But it's scary, right? For any coach to do that, take some balls. And I don't think I would have done that 8 years ago. I don't think I would have had the confidence to take a step back and trust. But what I did find from that, maybe not so from the parents, but from the players, is a lot of trust in me because they almost felt like, oh, okay, we can actually be quite relaxed with this guy. Whereas I think 8 years ago, really sort of, sorry to say it, but I generally ruled by fear because I'd be shouty and everything was done to very high standards. Whereas now it's, if I can say nothing or less than I will. Drives a parent crazy though. Parents don't like me coaching because I do just sit back and I don't like to use the word manipulate, but I just manipulate the environment for that sandbox because to me, that's the kids. So if I can engage with them at their level, then yeah, it's all good.
There's something really big here where I think if we think about it evolutionarily, right? how important is it for you to learn motor skills as a child, right? Like for evolutionary fitness, that's extremely critical, right? How do you move around in the environment? How are you going to get some food? That's a tough problem to solve. And you essentially, the better you can do that and the earlier you can do that, is going to be much, much better, right? So that's got to be a conserved thing that evolution really drives us towards. And so there's something that it really makes so much sense to me, where doesn't it make sense that kids would evolve to intuitively want to learn movement in the most effective ways, right? And that if it really was more effective for learning adaptable, flexible skill in a wide variety of contexts to drill movements and to correct them and have expert instruction and all this, I think kids would want to do it more just naturally, right? Like they would have a craving for that. It wouldn't be that, from an evolutionary perspective, it wouldn't be that hard, right? And there's something where it makes so much sense that kids naturally just they want to play games, they want to play tasks, they want to manipulate the constraints, they want to do it different. A lot of the time, they rarely want to do the same thing the same way. And it makes so much sense that what we're saying now and what we're seeing in the science is that is actually the most effective way to learn. That just can't be a coincidence to me, you know?
Yeah. And I think if you spend time watching children play, that's all they do all day, every day. Like I've got a 1-year-old in a minute and he just wants to interact with the world. But like you said, he doesn't interact with the world in the same way over and over again. He's not there building his blocks the same way. He's there building blocks in lots of different ways because he's really curious about different things. And I think it's really just powerful watching him play because you're right. Like he finds multiple different ways to climb up on the sofa. Whereas he's found a way. But that's not good enough for him because he's now exploring these new action capacity, the new capacity. It looks really dangerous and it's hard for me as a parent because I'm like, oh my God, I've got to intervene. But then part of me from an ecological point of view is like, I wonder what happens here. And it's really good because I put a post out about him on LinkedIn because we got him this little set of drums. He's never seen a drum kit in his life. And what does he do? Starts banging the drums. And it's like, no one's ever I didn't say to him, this is a set of drums. Okay. And you bang the drums. I didn't show him, just put it down. And there's an affordance there for him to start banging it. And it's like, that's mad because there's something there in human development that just wants him to interact with stuff and try stuff. And you're right with that example with the under 8 players. They had the option to go and drill. They had the equipment, they had the baskets, they had the cones, the lines, they had each other. They've all been in those type of sessions outside of me before, but they didn't choose that. And I think that's a lesson for any tennis coach or sports coach in the world. I mentioned before, it's their world. And I think when you go to an adult though, when you say to an adult, what do you want to do? We want to drill. Or can you feed me 50 forehands? And I think at some point along the line, whether it be education or whatever, work maybe, that we almost lose that creativity. And it almost becomes, I need to learn the drill. I need to learn the movement first. And I'm like, no, because no one taught you how to walk. Like,
I wonder if there's also this scary thing of like, oh, if I just play tennis, then I'll lose. And so maybe it's like lower stakes. If, we can just work on the serve over and over. Yeah, feed me 50 forehands, you know?
I mean, there's a lot to that as well. And it goes back to what I said, I think, at the start of the recording. There's a misconception of tennis. Tennis is a game of losing. There's not many sports in the world where you constantly lose. Like in tennis, if you play a match, you only win 55% of the points on average. So therefore, 45% of the time you're losing. In most other sports, if you lose in jiu-jitsu, that's it. It's game over. So you deal with that failure and it's there. But in tennis, if you miss 45 shots out of 100, you're constantly dealing with that. And that's quite tough in tennis because it's very outcome based. And I think people shy away from that. But when I then present them with the stats, like Djokovic, out of 100 points, how many points does Djokovic win? 90. No, he doesn't. He wins 51%. Arguably the greatest player who's ever played a game. He's losing 49 out of every 300 points. But people think like the best players in the world don't lose and they don't miss. And there's a great documentary on Netflix called Breakpoint, and it follows professional players around on tour for 2 years. If you watch that documentary, all those pro players talk about is losing and how tough it is. You travel to Australia and you've put in 4 weeks of pre-season and you lose first round. It's like, now I've got to go to South America and like, but even at our level, like you could practice, like you said before, your first tennis match, you lose because you're nervous, you're anxious, you don't know. It's a brand new environment. And it sounds really weird, but in my environments, I just make losing normal. Because you lose all the time in my lessons. Like, it goes back to that retired guy who I had a lesson with this week. He lost a lot in that first lesson. Like, he's not going to beat me first lesson. But it didn't matter because I was like, it's not Wimbledon. We're not recording the score. It's not going on YouTube. No one really knows. What does winning really mean? Like, at the end of the session, if you go away and go, you know what, I really enjoyed that, I'll come back next week, that's a win. I think it's just how we frame winning. And I think tennis is its own worst enemy in that case. Goes back to, like you said, like coaches make it look like it has to be perfect. There's a model here. There's a way you have to play. Whereas I'm like, tennis is the imperfect game. It's so dynamic and so variable. And that's why I think it lends itself so nicely to ecological dynamics, because it's such a rich environment of ever-changing dynamical systems and constraints. And I could play you today in tennis. I can play you tomorrow. It's completely different. You're different. I'm different. Environment's different. And I think when you present that to people, it again disarms them. So that guy who came to lesson this week, when we have a lesson tomorrow, he's not bothered about playing matches tomorrow because he's done it already. He's not bothered at losing because he's used to it. But he's got that now intrinsic motivation where he doesn't want to lose as much this week than he did last week. And that's for me, it's just how we sell it. And again, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but that's what ecological dynamics is, because it's a sandbox mode. Like there's no right or wrong way. But that's hard for some tennis coaches, especially because that's all they've ever known. And through their coach education, that's all they've ever been taught. And I don't ever believe a coach goes out to do a bad lesson. They only know what they know and they deliver the best lesson with what they're given. And I'm like, well, have you ever heard of this thing called ecological dynamics? It could change how you see the world and change your players. And it's just framing losing. Tennis is a game of losing. So when you play against me, when you come to the UK, you probably lose, but you'll enjoy it. It'll be good fun. Then again, based on your sumo wrestling record, I'm not too sure.
So I've got a theory here, and I'm really curious to hear your take on it. Are you familiar with challenge point? So I want to write a paper about this, but I think challenge point is outdated and wrong. So here's the thing, right? So challenge point, it's based on the idea of a motor program, right? So the idea is, okay, there's this optimal challenge point. There's this optimal level of challenge where you get an optimal amount of information. And, it's around like 70, 80%, right? So, okay. Well, they're using a Shannon definition of information, I believe, which is information is a reduction of uncertainty. And so for them, that information is coming from, is this motor program successful or not? So the idea is, okay, if I'm doing something really hard and I suck, the success rate of my motor program is 0.
Mm-hmm.
So like my expected success rate is 0. My actual success rate is 0. I run the program. It didn't succeed where I thought it wouldn't. So I've gained no information. And on the other side, if, I'm an expert and the task is easy, my success rate is 100%. my expected success rate is 100%. That's the same. I don't get any additional information by running that motor program. So that's not all. And I think we should step back. So one, what I see in practice is often different from that. And as one big thing, a lot of things you can't just say that's a success and that isn't, right? What's a success in dance?
Mm-hmm.
There's no binary success or failure whatsoever in dance ever. You can say that's a little more clumsy, that's a little less clumsy, or maybe you want clumsy sometimes, right? So it's really very much a spectrum and a three-dimensional thing. Anyway, so if we think about, like, we take a step back of what Challenge Point was originally proposing, which is, I think, much more plausible, that there's an optimal amount of information in the kind of practice task, right? So there's theoretically an amount of information that's overwhelming. There's an amount of information that's optimal. And there's an amount of information that is like, I'm not getting anything new, right? I think if we first equate motivation, if we get only people where, and we'll get this, some people are not going to be deterred by, let's say a few hundred failures, right? A few thousand failures is a different thing. That'll start to get to you, But certainly like a few hours of failing, not a big deal. If I come play tennis with you and you crush me every single point, I'm happy to, I'll be excited about it, right? Because it's like, okay, like I'm learning different things, So if we think about, okay, one, let's keep people motivated. So that trumps everything, because if motivation dips, then focus on the task dips, and now, perception, everything drops. So we need that. And so certain people are going to need higher success rate or whatever to facilitate that motivation. Okay, great. But let's hold that constant. Let's say we've got like really disciplined, really motivated athletes that they're robust to failure. They're going to be able to push through it. I think often, so I'll give a jiu-jitsu example that was really salient for me. I was doing a task like 6 months ago with a beginner. And so we're doing leg locks, and he's never done them before. And then, so he's partnered with me, and we're around the same size. But so the task is like just, catch a heel. And I am catching this guy easily every 10 seconds. Heel hook, heel hook, heel hook. And he's one of those people. He's motivated the whole time. He's not like, oh, I can't win. Like, no, he was like just engaged with the task. He's trying to do his best, right? The whole time. With almost no instruction, in 10 minutes, he went in under 10 minutes, I think it was actually like closer to 6 or 7 minutes. He went from, I could catch him in a heel hook in 10 seconds easily, to it's going to take me 20 seconds and I'm going to have to work a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That is an absurd amount of progress. And if you look on paper with challenge point sort of stuff, his success rate was 0. And yet those are the sorts of situations where I actually have seen the most progress from people. Is like, okay, yeah, they're failing, but it's clear and salient information. For him, it's very obvious. I'm getting him the same thing each time. If I'm like catching with a heel hook and then a knee bar and then a toe hold and then a rear naked choke, and like totally different things from totally different places, maybe that's overwhelming. But catching someone with the same move over and over, even a day one has never done this task before, that was workable. That was not an overwhelming amount of information for him. And so I think that was really optimal, actually. And so this is my thought more generally, is like, rather than thinking about, oh, we need success rate around 70, 80%, we got to be thinking, what's an overwhelming amount of information for people? I think we need to start on that side. Because I think if we think about what's an optimal amount of information, I think we start way too low. And if you actually think about, we start way too low and we start in non-representative environments. So I think if we try to push it, we say, how much information is really going to overwhelm you? And we ease it back a little. I think that gets us to a really optimal place. And sometimes maybe that success rate is higher than 80%, but I think often it's going to be a lot lower. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, it definitely resonates with me. And I think I almost have the same theory or methodology when I work with my players. Like, I don't call it challenge point or anything like that. I always look at it, I'm constantly looking to destabilize you. So
Yeah.
I'm constantly looking to, if you're looking comfortable, can I make you uncomfortable? And I don't want to make you really uncomfortable. So put you in a situation that you find quite challenging, quite tough. Challenge point, maybe. So I almost bring you down to that almost zero. And then when you start getting back up to 60, 70, I'll change something and I'll destabilize you again. And I've used that quite a lot over the past 18 months. And I've found great success with that. And I almost call it like I'm a DJ. I'm always constantly trying to find that right mix, because I don't want lots of success and I don't just want lots of failure where there's no progress, but I want to destabilize you. Like you're saying now, is like, okay, can I bring you to zero? And then if I start seeing you get better and get better and get better, destabilize you again. Because when you play, again, from a tennis point of view, that's what momentum feels like an awful lot. Success, struggle, success, struggle, 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 success. So I'm trying to replicate that within my training. And I've used that with 5-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 76-year-olds. Every single one has the same effect. The learning just ramps up massively. But a lot of it is how you frame it. And I mentioned before, I'll use words like, this is going to be challenging for you. This is going to make you uncomfortable. But learning's done in the uncomfortable. And in a few minutes, you won't be uncomfortable. And like for me, everything you said there definitely resonates, because that's pretty much how I have started to work with a lot of my players, based on the tennis idea of success, failure, constantly that dopamine hit, and then depression almost of winning and losing. And what I found when I make my practices like that, when they go to matches, they can deal with the highs and lows. And I always say to the players, it's like a roller coaster. Like 1 minute you're up, you're on top of the world, that pretty girl turns up and puts your serve off, and then the next minute you can't get a serve in. Okay, but now you've got to learn how to deal with that. And like I mentioned before, that documentary Breakpoint, most top tennis players, Nadal's the classic one, he talks about the struggle and how he deals with the tough moments. There's a great quote of his where he says, like, I don't learn from my wins. I don't go away with any information. But when I get beaten, and I get beaten badly, so much information now. I know exactly where I need to be. And I think that's what sets me a little bit different to most tennis coaches, because I look to make you feel, it sounds really bad, I look to put you uncomfortable. Because for me, that's such rich information.
So this is like, I think it might sound bad to people. So I want to put some foundation to this. So I think people can map this to like why we've got this, are we like masochists? You know, are we just trying to make our athletes uncomfortable? Like, no, right? There's reasoning for this. So here's my thought. So if you think about hand balancing, right? Hand balancing, I think more than almost any other skill, you could imagine that it is about being in the perfect position, right? Because the physics kind of map to that. It's a close skill, right? So you could say it's about getting to that perfect position, and then we just need to correct you to that. But to the extent to which you do that, you'll fail, because the reality of hand balancing is it's not about being in the perfect position. It's about correcting from improper positions or positions that you aren't able to balance in. And so what hand balancing actually is, when you can balance a handstand, is not when you can hold. It's so easy. Literally, just about any athlete, you can put them in a handstand against the wall, and if they're somewhat flexible, you could get them to a perfect handstand in a day, just with some cues. Well, actually, in a minute, you just put them there. Okay, lock the elbows, hand shoulder width, put the hands here. Okay, look between your hands. Okay, got it. That's the position. Why can't you do it on the floor? Because the floor, gravity is pulling you away from that position. The more you deviate from that position, the more it pulls you away from it. So what we need is to be able to correct, and we need degeneracy and flexibility to be able to correct in different ways with different body parts and have them work together. And so we could approach this, even with the ecological approach, we could approach performance as, how do we use constraints to guide people towards optimal solutions, right? And what happens when you do that is you start over-constraining. You start taking away really important information that changes the dynamics and allows learners to attune to all this important stuff and learn important things. And so I think a much better approach is, like you're describing here, is instead of trying to like guide them towards success, let's put them in situations where they fail. And then we give them the ability to solve that problem. Once you're in the environment, you're engaged with the problem, you've got to figure out a way to solve it, and you're going to. And when you can do that for all the problems you're having, that's what success really is. Is not like doing the successful thing. It's about not failing. It's about no matter what happens, you're going to find a way to get the ball where the other guy can't get it back, or to get back to that perfect hand balancing position, or to get the other guy to tap in jiu-jitsu. It's about recalibrating and moving away from failure rather than it is about being at success. And so I think that approach is really the most effective one, of giving students the problems that they're struggling with and allowing them to solve those problems. And now what you get students where, like, how are they going to fuck up? Because you've presented them with all the ways they're screwing up, all their biggest problems. So now you have really anti-fragile, adaptable athletes. And if you can't screw up, well, of course you're going to succeed, right?
Massively. And like, as you were talking now, I was thinking back to a tournament I was at in December with a player, and it's called a county event. So it's one of those few events where I'm actually on court with the players. It's quite nice. So my player's 40 love up, about to win the match, has a wobble. Long story short, she loses. And I'm like, I'm so happy. And she goes, what do you mean you're happy? I went, because you're 40 love up. You now know what that feels like. Next time you're 40 love up, you know exactly how not to behave. I'm so happy. And she's like, but I lost. Yeah. But you need to be 40 love up and lose. No matter how much we try that in training, you need to know that. Goes back to the competition element. You know what that feels like now. And I want you to write down in your journal how you felt, how you behaved. And next time, do the opposite. Or do something different. And guess what? You may do something different and that might not work. Write that down and then do something different again. That's learning to me. And it's interesting when you speak to parents about this, and I say it's my matrix moment. So I've got my red pill, my blue pill. And I say to parents, okay, I've got the red pill. I can teach you technique. The blue pill here, though, I can teach your child resilience, like how to come back when things are tough, stress management, problem solving, decision making, like how they can handle pressure situations. What pill do you want? We'll have some of that. But that means when we have our lessons, there's going to be moments of being uncomfortable. And I say it to the players all the time, like, my job is to make you uncomfortable. My job is a problem setter. Like, I'm just here to cause you problems all for the next hour. But we're going to have some fun doing it though as well. It's not like you're not suffering. You're going to enjoy it. We're going to have a giggle and we're going to make some big mistakes. But if we're going to make mistakes, make them big, make them obvious, because we don't know. We don't know what we're capable of. Because you may be able to smash that ball down a line from that position. I don't know. But let's find out. And then it goes back to the framing element. Once you frame that, kids will try it. And they lose. And it's quite big in tennis. It's what we call the fear of failure. And you see this a lot in competition where kids, when things get tight and tense, or a tight scoreboard maybe, they'll start hitting the ball down the middle. They'll start decelerating the racket. They'll start being safe. And for me, they stop looking to win. So their intention is to survive. And what I say to them, but if your intention is to just survive, that's all you see. you miss the opportunities. This is where the red car story came in. You miss the red cars, or the pink envelopes, as Rob Gray calls them. Like, you miss opportunities. But if you are looking to attack, you will then see them. And if you don't go looking for that food in the fridge, you'll never find it. And when you have these conversations with kids, people say, oh, it's a bit deep, isn't it? It's quite heavy psychology. That's what tennis is. It's just human behavior. In tennis, we have this word performance, and it's normally associated with elite, with the best of the best kids. But I'm saying every player is a performer. When we play, when you come to the UK, you are a performer because you're performing under stress. And we need more of these conversations, not just in my sport, but all other sports, because I think coaching, we've got it a little bit back to front. It's that, yeah, we do want you to fail. And that sounds weird, but in a nice way. And like I said, we can have lots of fun as well, because sport's fun. I'm not crazy. I'm not there to make this too much.
It's fun. It's fun to solve problems, you know? And especially if that solving problems comes directly with like some big improvements, you know, if you can like feel that. So to go back to tennis a little more, so you talked about how important the serve is, right? So that's I'm sure a big piece of the picture. And you mentioned using, you know, constraints of like different compression balls. You mentioned changing the size of the court. So what's the picture look like as far as what other things are you looking for athletes to develop, right? So like if I come in to train with you, like I assume we're looking to develop my serve. What else?
Just a big serve will do. Just a big refine.
I mean, you made a good point for that, really.
That's what we need. To be honest, it's building the game around what you enjoy. Like most players, good serve, good forehand. Like forehand is dominant. Most top players, 70% of the time, are winning with a forehand. Let's build a game around that. If you love volleying, okay, let's. A lot of the time, my players, it's looking at your attributes as well. Like if you're like me and quite small, you're never going to be a serve volleyer. Like I haven't got the biggest serve in the world, but I've got a big forehand. So let's build a game around that. If you're 6'7", you're going to have a big serve and you're probably going to be good coming forward. So it's looking at what you enjoy doing, looking at what attributes, what physical action capacity you've got. Okay, well, let's build a game around that. Let's have a strength-based approach. It's very difficult in tennis to be good at everything. Even like a Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, Serena, Venus, they're not good at every single shot because it's so dynamic. There's so many different moving parts. So they'll be looking to set up their strengths, and that's the way I work, generally speaking. And it came to light quite recently with a player that I'm working with, an under-9 player, and this whole conception of you have to be good at everything. This under-9 player, he's got the body of an 11-year-old, really tall kid. Well, he has to compete with in his age group, and he's like that tall, and the rest of the kids are that tall. So he's got a huge advantage. We've built his game around him, so he's got a big serve and a big forehand. He goes to a tournament a few weeks back, sees me on the Monday. How did you get on? I won the tournament. Great, but how did you really get on? Not bothered up with the tournament win. Oh, yeah, served really well. Set my forehand up was great. But can we do backhands today? Okay, that's interesting. So you've won the tournament. You've won with your serve and your forehand, but you want to do backhands. Okay, why? Well, I was watching the other boys and they all had really good backhands and like they could win lots of points with their backhand. And I don't win points from my backhand. So that's really interesting because like, it's not like he's gone to the tournament and lost. He's gone and been successful and he's got very clear weapons that we've worked on for months. So being played centered, I'm like, okay, you want to do backhands? We'll do some backhands. What do you want to do with your backhand? Oh, I want to be able to hit the ball hard. Oh, classic answer. Okay, great. We want to hit the ball hard. Okay, let's be a bit more specific. Well, I want to be able to stretch my opponents because we talk about jamming and stretching. So stretching is where you get them playing outside the line of their body to get them off balance. Okay, so how about we do
like running side to side or like...
Yeah, a little bit. But like, so if you're completely balanced and stood still, you can strike the ball really well. So I want some movement as you're striking the ball. And if I can get you on the complete run, that's the absolute gold standard, because it's really difficult to strike because you haven't got the ground to push against and stuff. Sounded quite technical there. So I move away from that. So yeah, so trying to stretch. So I said, well, what we'll do is we'll set a practice up then to see how often that happens. So in this first practice, the tram lines, which are generally out for singles, they're in for you, but only on your backhand. So you can hit your backhand into an area of the court that you normally can't hit into. So you can really stretch me. So we play about 50 points. We sit down. How many backhands went in the tram line? 0. Okay. How many opportunities did you have? 2. Okay. So out of 2, out of 50, not looking that good here. And it's interesting because he's going, yeah, but I want more spin and I want to win more points from a backhand. Okay. Well, let's do another practice. So if you win with a backhand, you get extra points. So we're just manipulating the score now. Any backhand counts. Another 50 points, 0 points, 1. And I'm like, out of 100 points, only 2 opportunities, 0 taken. So our success rate is pretty much 0. What does that tell you? I don't win many points from my backhand. Okay. But out of the 100 points we played, you won, let's say 40% with your forehand and 20% with your serve. Do you have to be good at everything? No. And it's, for me, it's almost putting in that situation where you don't have to be good at everything in tennis. And it's really easy to look at your peers and your competitors and they will have big backhands and go, I want what they have. But I also said to him, well, I guarantee in that tournament, they would have looked at you and went, I want your serve. I want your forehand. And for me, I tell that long-winded story because it's not about being good at everything in tennis. It's about being good at certain things that you enjoy and your body affords you. Like his backhand, because he's really tall and he's got quite long limbs, his backhand's quite awkward, but he doesn't lose a lot of points with his backhand. So for me, it's building the game around you. And even though he believes he needed a backhand, he doesn't actually need a really big backhand. He just has to have a awareness of his strengths. I don't know if that answers your question whatsoever, but for me, it's just building a game. And what was really interesting as well in that is it was his dad who told him he needed a bigger backhand. So when we got into the real crux of it at the end of the session, it's like, oh yeah, my dad told me my backhand needs to be better. It's like, oh, okay. Because parents again perceive that, well, his backhand's not that good.
Are there situations where you can only really use a backhand? Like,
yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So with the player I'm talking about, we almost look at his backhand as if the ball comes to your backhand, the intention is to get it back on your forehand as quick as possible. So can you hit your backhand into a position where your opponent gives it back to your forehand? Because obviously, if his forehand's quite dominant, his opponent's going to try and keep away from that as much as possible. So we work on things like him cheating his position, for example. So he'll stand to a position where he'll take it more on the forehand. And that's the beauty of the game, because the bit sometimes we forget in tennis is it is a competition. Like, I'm trying to beat you and you're trying to beat me. I'm good at certain things. You're a bit like jiu-jitsu. Like, we're all good in different departments and we're trying to implement our game and stop you playing your game. And it's like, for me, it's building a awareness around that. So I use that example of, okay, your backhand doesn't have to be great, but if it does go to your backhand, like, you've got to be able to get it back, because if you can't get it back, then we're in trouble. But it doesn't have to be a winner, if that makes sense. It doesn't have to be this powerful shot. And a very famous Canadian/British tennis player, Greg Rosetsky, he had a slice backhand. So he could never drive a backhand. So he couldn't hit it with lots of spin and lots of power. He could only slice it where the ball goes a bit slower. Got to world number 4. And people say he never had a backhand. And he got to the US Open final. But the idea is in tennis, you've got to be good at everything, because it appears the best players are. So to answer your question, it's just building a game around you and a awareness around what you're good at.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Yeah, there's so many parallels with martial arts. It's really exactly the same way. And that's one thing, I haven't really talked about this with anyone, certainly not publicly, but it's one thing I think with jiu-jitsu, the way people are doing it right now in the ecological side, is to create really well-rounded athletes, that they're good everywhere. And competition really isn't about being good everywhere. I think here's the way I think about it is to win, to be able to win, you have to be able to be really good somewhere. If you want to not be able to lose, you've got to be, amazing everywhere, right? But those are different things. And I think the starting point is probably being more really good somewhere, So that's a whole thing. But then, so I'm thinking, okay, so imagine maybe I want to if I wanted to coach someone for tennis, right? So I've got no idea what's going on, right? I'm like, okay, we can manipulate some constraints for the serve. We can play with different balls. We can play with different court sizes. What else do we need to do? What are the other dials you toggle? What are the other, do you have some favorite tasks that you like to use?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for me, a lot of it, I do a lot of stuff in and around scoreboard pressure. So it goes back to a step before, putting you in difficult positions with the scoreboard, because that scoreboard massively affects your behavior. So if I put you in love 30 down, it will be different when you're 30 love up. So I'll really be quite conscious of the environment. For me, when I first started coaching tennis from an ecological point of view, it was a lot about task design. Like you said, manipulate the space, manipulate the rules, the equipment. But now it's much more about, okay, can I manipulate the environment more? And that might be putting different scoreboard pressure on. One that's quite obvious, and it happens a lot in competition. I might just call balls out that are blatantly in. You hit a ball in, I go out. And in tennis is one of those weird sports where we have no umpires at junior level. Every match has no umpire. So if I call the ball out, it's the player who's closest to the ball makes the call. So if you're playing against me and the ball lands on my side, if I call it out, it's out. So I will do stuff like that because one, it's representative because it happens all the time. And it winds you up because the ball's blatantly in. I'm like, no, sorry, Bren, it's out. That's my call. And now you're raging. Now your behavior's changed. So, and even things like in tennis, we have toilet breaks. And a toilet break's interesting because it's normally used for sportsmanship reasons. Like if I've got momentum and you haven't, you'll decide that you need a toilet because you want to manipulate or change the environment and give me time to think or switch off. So I do a lot of that stuff these days where I'm just constantly pulling at levers that they will deal with in matches. And 1 minute we're playing indoors. Okay, now we're going outside. Why? Because let's go outside because there's a big thing in the sky called the sun and it's windy and generally raining here in England. Now, so I'm just trying to do things to unsettle you because most tennis matches, they're generally won on what I call these momentum moments of we could be having this massive battle where it's quite balanced. Then all of a sudden you hit the ball, it hits the top of the net and trickles over. And it's luck, apparently. I think it's a good shot, but it's luck. But that just changes your complete perception of the world now because you think that I've got really lucky. It was a big point. That changes your behavior. And once you change behavior, as you know, changes your decision making, your perception, your action. So I find now much more with that. I'm just manipulating those moments, like the line calls, or I might get the parent to come and sit courtside and not tell the player. Because now mum or dad or whoever's there, that now changes the feel of the environment. Behavior changes. And it goes back to like you were saying before, because when these kids compete, that's what they're going to deal with. And even if I'm working with the guy who's retired, I'll still manipulate stuff because when he plays with his mates, he's going to deal with bad line calls. He's going to deal with it start raining or someone turns up and he wants to impress them. And I think that's why I said before, I'm much more of a environmental designer these days where, okay, how can I manipulate the environment? Because I think task constraints are the low hanging fruit. Whereas I think now 5-6 years into this journey, I'm looking at a slightly bigger picture, and it's that environmental changes. It goes back to, like I said before, can I make you a little bit uncomfortable? And that might just be the score pressure. or the fact that I'm just being an absolute dick to you and calling the ball out when it's miles in. Or a great one is just forget the score. So you're winning 40-15. I know you're not. It's 30 all. And you have a little bit of an argument. I think that's 30 all. And now you start second guessing yourself. But like, you can't do those things via drills because you need to do it within the context of a game.
Yeah.
Because there has to be consequence to it. There has to be like a winner, a clear winner and loser at the end. If you do those things in drills, it doesn't have the same weight because there's no consequence. If you're just hitting 50 balls from a basket, what's the consequence if you lose? Like, how can I manipulate the score? Like, it's really difficult. I think that's one thing that I'd work on with any player of any aging stage is, can you meet the demands of the game? And generally that's dealing with the ever-changing environment. It goes back to, like I said before, with the serve. The environment influences your serve massively. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, but there's still more. I dig up more because there's the same way when I talk to Cal, I'm like, I know what you're doing is much more sophisticated than. So okay, so that's another big part of the picture here, right? So I really love the point pressure, screwing with the umpire, saying things are out. Okay, that's all like really tactical sort of stuff, I think, which is really important. And maybe for jiu-jitsu coaches listening to this, like that's something that definitely I think we need to be doing a lot more of. Oddly enough, that traditional jiu-jitsu coaches do a lot of.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it's something that they gravitate towards because it's like, it's kind of intuitively important. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't understand all of why, you know, their programs, this, that. I think it's something that's clear to everyone is like, yeah, you kind of need to be exposed to the situations that you want to be good at. So I'll give you maybe to give you a little more scaffolding. So for submission grappling, we could divide it up into a few sections. We could say it's standing where, okay, we're trying to put the other person on the floor. And then from there, we're trying to get past the legs or get to an entanglement. And then from either the pins or the entanglements, we're looking for submission. So we kind of got to learn takedowns, sweeps, pinning, submissions, and then escapes from submissions and escapes from pins. Mm-hmm. And then we kind of create, when we use constraints in the CLA for submission grappling, we've got to address all of those things to some extent, right? Like, or at least we need to address like the first two, maybe. That's interesting. Having just talked about the well-roundedness, there is something that could be there. I actually noticed with Cal's guys, they were really good at, I ran a class. So Cal ran a class and then I ran a class for his guys and then had him critique it. And one of the things that was very interesting that his guys were very good at, they were very good at getting a takedown and then getting immediately to a submission. Mm-hmm. Where you don't see that so much. And it's like, great. You didn't have to play the rest of the game. You won the whole thing in 10 seconds, you know? So there is an angle there where, you know, we can work with situations where it's just like, maybe we let go of entanglements. Or, you know, maybe we find certain places where you're good or you're predisposed to and we focus on it. But at least generally, if we were to think about, you know, a well-rounded jiu-jitsu athlete, you need to be able to solve all of those problems. What are those problems like for tennis?
Very similar to Cal. Like for me, it's those first exchanges. So for tennis, you've got the serve, and then you've got the return. So with the serve, I mentioned at the start of the recording, like the average rally is 4 in tennis. So I really focus on those first 4 exchanges. So if you're working with me, it's a case of, can we either win points with serve? If not, can we set up what we call a +1, so serve +1 or a ball 3? And that's generally a forehand. So in the top game, most top players will serve and the next shot will be a forehand because they use the serve to set up the forehand. And the forehand is the submission. It's a knockout blow. So if I serve and jam you up, ball lands short, I move in, I can put the ball away. So it's those sort of nested affordances that we work on. So it's the first couple of shots with the return. If I'm returning your big first serve of 8 miles an hour, okay, I can probably attack it because it's so slow. So I can be quite aggressive. So in that situation, I become the dominant player. But if you've got a big serve at 110 mile an hour, I've got to survive. So I've got to almost defend that moment. And then from there, I've got to get myself into a position where I can get the submission in a tennis sense. So I work a lot around those first 4 exchanges. So the first 4 shots, because that's what most matches are. Again, big misconception in tennis is we don't rally. Like, it's generally not a game of like 15, 20 shots. You will see the odd outlier, but the stats show is no matter what the level, whether it's beginners, professional players or pro players, the average rally is 4. So therefore, when I do a lot of my coaching, it makes sense to build it around those 4 shots. A bit like you're saying there with Cal, like, why would I bother with the tanglement or the entanglement if I can just submit you? Why would I bother rolling around for 20 minutes if I can just take you out in 10 seconds? And that's the way I work with the players. And I use a lot of MMA metaphors with the kids. It's like, if you think about the serve, if this is a fight, it's a free punch. I get to punch you. So I want to do damage with that first punch. I don't want to tickle you, because if I tickle you, then you're punching me. So can I either knock you out with a serve or at least set you up for the submission or set you up for the next shot? With the returns, a little bit different. Again, depends on the context. Serve, it might be, can I defend against that first big knockout punch? And then can I find a way to counter you? And for me, it really helps drive players' intention on those first 4 shots. And most of my players, we're not looking to rally. We try and make sure my players are effective in those first 4 shots. So we have a mantra and we say we don't wait. And what we mean by that is we don't wait to win. Because a lot of, I said before about fear of failure, a lot of tennis players, they wait for you to miss. But from my point of view, why are we waiting? Like, let's try and win. And if we can win in 2 shots, then we win in 2. And I found from working that way, it really drives their intention because they're looking for ways to win. A bit like Cal's judo players, judo pupils. They're looking for submission straight away. So they're looking to end the fight as quick as possible. And that's what I try and teach the players. It's, let's look to win. And like I said before, like, that does carry a degree of risk in their eyes, but you're not going to win any tennis tournaments by not taking risk. And that doesn't mean they go balls to the wall and start trying to smack everything. And that's where intention comes in, because it has to be a clear intention. Like, can I jam you, get an easier ball, and now can I stretch you? It's not, can I win the point, if that makes sense? So they're sort of my principles of play, maybe would be a good way to describe them, is let's just be really good at those first 4 shots. And like we said before, all the other shots, they're all there anyway. Like, they can defend from uncomfortable positions because they've been in that situation. They can turn around difficult situations because I put them in that situation. So if they do find themselves in a 12-shot rally, they can handle it because they're used to grinding it out in sessions at some point. Whereas a lot of tennis coaches think the opposite way. Like, if you rally to 50, then you'll be really consistent, whereas it doesn't really meet the reality of the game. Yeah, that's I think my principles of play. Very similar to Cal, I reckon. Just end the fight as quick as possible. Why are we rallying for? If we can win, let's just win. Maybe that's just my game style, because I didn't want to be rallying for 50 shots.
Yeah, this is great to hear. And I think this is the thing that was so exciting about getting to talk to you, is I think it's like the invariance in the information arrays, right? It's like, by seeing how really skilled practitioners and coaches in different sports are using this in totally different contexts, but using the same principles, I think we get to see what doesn't change, and we get to see really interesting things that then can apply back to different contexts. So this is really, really great.
But that bit, sorry, to cut you off. That's really important though, because like, for the first 20 years of my tennis coaching career, I only ever looked in tennis, never looked at any other sports. And through my learning through ecological dynamics, it's allowed, well, I had to, because I mentioned before, there's no information on tennis when I first started. But now I'm listening to your podcast. I'm listening to Marianne Davis, Stu Armstrong, Rob Gray, lots of different practitioners for different sports. And it's like, oh, that makes sense. Like Marianne Davis talking about riding a horse. I'm like, how do you control an animal? It's hard enough controlling a human. Like, but okay, but that resonates. And like, I think that's what separates, I say, our community with ecological dynamics, because we are branching out to different coaches and practitioners in different sports, and we're finding these commonalities of human behavior. And I think, yeah, we all just nod at each other going, oh yeah, that actually makes sense in jiu-jitsu that it does tennis. And when I tell my tennis coaching friends that I listen to like jiu-jitsu podcasts and Greg Saunders and yourself, they go, why? I'm like, because so much of it relates, like the fighting analogy, and trying to tame a horse is like trying to tame a 6-year-old. It's very similar. But that's something I think a lot of coaches don't do. They don't branch out because they just stay in their lane and think, I need to know everything about my sport. I've learned more about coaching in the past 5 years than I did the first 20. I think that's a really, really important point.
Amazing. So do you ever have you guys rally?
No.
Never.
No.
Interesting.
Coaches watching us are going, what? No way. Like, even when if you came to a lesson with me tomorrow, like a traditional coach would spend 5 minutes in the service boxes, the close bit of the court, like tapping the ball, then 5 minutes at the baseline, 5 minutes cross court, just warming up. I'm like, why? Why are we going to waste 20 minutes tapping the ball to each other and then I'm going to try and beat you? Let's just try and beat you straight away. And it's really interesting because when you take over, like I've covered sessions before for other coaches and I say to the players, okay, we're just going to play tennis here. Like we scale it down, like we'll play in a small area first, but it's competitive straight away. And they always go, oh no, I need 5 minutes to get my eye in to warm up. Oh, no, you don't. You'll be fine. After that first session, like, I really enjoyed that because it got me straight in. Like, rather than taking 20 minutes to warm up, I was engaged straight away because there's a consequence to it. So I see the same of rallying. It's like, why would you rally? Because it's not representative. And people say, okay, for confidence. But I'm like, yeah, but in a match, as soon as I hit the ball away from you, that confidence is gone because it's a confidence in a different context. And we're not trying to repeat the same action. So for me, I've almost constrained myself. It's a bit like a basket drill. People say to me, like, do you ever basket drill anymore? I'm like, no. Not that I think it's completely worthless, was pretty much is in my view, but I've constrained myself because I'm always thinking there must be a better way. Like, how can I do it a bit more representative? So if I want to get some volume, so let's go back to the boy with the backhand. If I want to get some more volume on the backhand, how can I manipulate a game that gives him more backhands rather than the rote repetition of backhand to backhand cross court? So I'll just make the court smaller on your side where I hit the ball to your backhand more. But you do it in a repetition without repetition way. And for me, when I've done that type of stuff, again, goes back to the challenge point. The skill transfer is so richer. Whereas if I just rally with you cross court for 10 minutes, it looks great. Put it in a match, it's gone again. It's the illusion. Not saying that you shouldn't ever rally. For me, I just don't see the value in it. And if coaches choose to rally, if players choose, again, I have players who say to me, I like rallying. Well, great. Don't need me. You don't need me. Like, you don't need me to rally. If you want to rally, I'm sure you can find a wall or someone else to rally with. Like, there's pretty, a bit like the Yannick Sinner. If I don't see value in it, I don't really want to do it, especially if you're paying me money as well. Because if you're paying me money, I want to maximize that time. Like, I don't want to do something just for, in tennis coaching, me and my friend call it playing the hits. Like, sometimes we like the hits, but it doesn't mean they're good. Like, a good song, if we overplay it, it's not that great. So no, I don't rally, which probably will sound crazy to most tennis coaches.
And that's a huge thing. Like, even I know that, like, you know, in tennis, the rallies, that's kind of what you do. Oh, let's go play tennis. Well, you know, like if I went to go play with a friend or my fiance, and, you know, maybe
it's funny
she hasn't played at all. So
no, but it's interesting because yesterday I did that coach workshop with the level 1 coaches. And I sent them out with a task. And the question was, how do you win points in tennis? And I sent them out to play, and they all went out and they just rallied. They fed the ball in underarm and they just rallied. And I didn't say anything for 5 minutes. I bring them in and I said, at one point, are you actually going to start playing tennis? And they all looked at me like I was nuts. And I was like, there was no serving and no one tried to win points because the mindset was, let's rally. But tennis is not a game of rally. Like I said before, tennis is not a game of rallying. Me and my friends are doing this thing at the minute that was hopefully going to put into a paper about, like, there's no neutral in tennis, because like in tennis we have phases of play of attack, neutral, and defense. Our argument is there's no neutral. There's always a slight tip one way or the other of attack and defense. And I'm guessing maybe in jiu-jitsu is the same, whether that be an environmental thing or an individual constraint. Nothing's ever 50-50. There's always a slight lean somewhere within tennis. So in a rally situation, it's never 50-50. Plus, I also think the word rally is a bad word, because if you say to play, like if I say to you, let's have a rally, the intention is keep the ball going backwards and forwards. But I don't want to rally.
Right. It's so interesting. Like, when you point it out, it actually seems so obvious now, because it's like, wow, it really is. With the rally, you hit the ball to the other person and they try to hit it back to you so that you can hit it back to them. And that is so obviously so different than put the ball where they can't hit it.
Yeah. And it goes back to that misconception of tennis. And for me, rally is a word that we don't use. But even like the word feed, because I've found, like, if I say to you, feed the ball in, you feed it in neutral. But I don't want that, because most tennis coaches feed neutral because we want you to get repetition. So now with players, I say first ball, like hit the first ball in or get the first strike in. And now the intention, again, this language is really important to players, because if I say to you, get the first strike, okay, I'm going to try and put Steve under some pressure. Whereas if I say to you, feed the ball in,
right,
nice neutral ball, that's not what I want. Goes back to the serve, strike the serve in, don't push it in, strike it in. So I think language is really, really key. And it's something that we get wrong within coaching in general, of like, we use, like I said before, metaphors. And then we just have this interpretation of what a rally is. Never happens in a match. So why would you spend 10 minutes doing something that never happens? But people think that's what tennis is. But for me, it's no. You're not playing tennis. You're playing at tennis. There's a big difference. And yesterday, 16 coaches, all players as well. And I'm like, you're not playing tennis. Now go back out and play tennis. But they're like you. They're going, oh, yeah, why did we do that? Because we've always done it.
So are you having someone serve for every task? Yeah.
Yeah, which is really, really unique and rare. So every time we start any practice, there's a serve. And that might be from different positions and stuff, but it always starts with an overhead. And for me, it just links everything in, because a big part of my tennis coaching career, like I mentioned before, we'd isolate the serve. We'd just do the serve at the end. We'd work on your rallying, your forehands and backhands without the serve. But if every point you play in a match starts with an overhead, surely it makes sense starting with that shot. And if the rallies are quite short, if they're only one or two shots, why are we taking out the first two shots? And so I did get some pushback on this from a coach, and they said, yeah, load and volume, like, surely it can't be good. I'm like, but these people aren't serving at 140 mile an hour. These are 9-10-year-olds. Like, they're not putting a lot of load on. They're getting a lot of repetition about repetition now.
Yeah.
I'll get them to do it in different positions and different courts and court positions and stuff. But what I found doing that though as well, and it's such an easy fix for coaches, my players can serve generally under a lot of pressure now. Like, they don't get the wobbles as much, because serving is just part of the game. They don't know any different. It's just normal. And like, if you think back to when you played and you think about when you served, so much pressure on it, because it's built up to be this big important shot. Whereas my players now, I'm sure if you ever spoke to them, it's just what we do to start. What's the big deal? Like, it's actually a really good thing because I can win points with it. Goes back to the young boy before. And that just became a non-negotiable that I set myself. Like, every single point, almost said rally, every single point starts with a serve. Doesn't have to be a world-beaten serve. Even if it's just me floating it in overhead, just as part of our first practice. Why not? Why not start like we do a match? Like, it's such a low-hanging fruit. And I preach it to tennis coaches. It's interesting because tennis coaches go, oh yeah, they love that idea. And then they go out and you'll miss a serve or two and they'll go, okay, let's stop. No, just feed it in now underarm. And I'm like, just get them some closer. Like, make the space bigger. Like, change the rules. Don't change the task. Keep the serve there. Just make it more achievable. Goes back to what we were saying about challenge point before. But don't take it away because there's a little bit of failure there. Just, yeah, allow them to explore it. And when you let someone just serve for the full, like, I reckon if you do a lesson with me in an hour, you're hitting over 100 serves in that hour.
Oh,
Easily, because every point's short. So therefore, if you're doing that 2-3 times a week, you're going to have a good serve because it's volume, it's repetition, repetition. You're doing it lots of different ways. And what's interesting about a lot of my players is that their serves are sometimes unorthodox as well. So it might not look like a model, but it's really effective. So when they go to like national camps and the national coaches are doing their model-based competency tests and they mark you on how it looks, my players generally score quite low, but their efficiency and their effectiveness is really high. And what's really crazy is the report always says, yeah, well, Bren needs to work on his service technique. And I'm like, but he's winning points. Like, and he's still growing. Like, it's going to change. But yeah, so it changes the mindset though, because then the serve becomes a weapon. It doesn't become something to fear. I know we've talked a lot about the serve, but in tennis, it's so huge. Is the shot that sets up those opportunities, and at any level, it wins points. So we shouldn't shy away from it. And it's not difficult, in my opinion.
that's awesome. And when I go back to, I barely remember most of the tennis I did, honestly, but it's funny when you mentioned it, we almost never did surfing. Like, it was an isolated thing, if ever. And then I think almost all of the practice I remember, it was like forehands and backhands and rallies and like bouncing the ball on the floor. And when you describe it this way, it's like, oh yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense why I was never good at the serve. We weren't doing it, you know?
And it goes back into that fear of failure, because coaches will set players up to do it. And there's a lot of failure at the start because it's a weird move, because we don't do a lot of stuff up here as humans. Like, our spatial awareness and our perception up there, like we don't always look up. It's a weird place to be moving. So at the start, of course, it's going to look weird. And it was interesting because I did a coaching workshop online the other week with a group of coaches. And I just framed it differently. I just said, this is what we call the degrees of freedom problem. And I just showed them clips of beginners that I've worked with. And this is why it looks that way. And I just hit them with a little bit of science of Bernstein's wisdom. And they all went, yeah, that's why it looks that way. That's why the hand goes up close to the ball, because the body's trying to find the most efficient, effective way. And I went, yeah, but you're making it worse by going in and changing it. Like, if you adapt the task. And it's interesting when coaches go, oh yeah, why did I think of that? Why did I not know this learning theory? Why is Bernstein's stuff that's been out for almost a century, why is this coming to me now? I'm like, I don't know, because like it should have been there on day one of your coach education. And then when coaches understand like degrees of freedom, like, it's not bad technique then. It's a solution that they found. And all they've got to try and do is have a small adaptation of that solution to make it better. And that then just frees the coach up. And in that workshop I said to coaches, it's not bad technique. It's really good technique. The body's being really clever. It's freezing up all those multiple body parts. Your job is to try and, make it a little bit more efficient in the moment, like I mentioned before. And from a coach's point of view, that's just really powerful. And it really frustrates me when that's not presented to coaches early enough. It's presented as a model. This is what it should look like, but no sort of background of why things are happening from a learning movement position. And that just blows my mind as a coach educator. It's like, why isn't this on day one? Of like, this is why it looks how it looks. Only national governing bodies, I guess, can answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's what we're trying to work on now, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's get it so that people can get this education from day one, right?
Yeah. I
Such a
think
big.
I think with on that point, though, there's a pushback here within tennis. Oh, it's too complicated. Oh, it's too complicated. Oh, it's the academic stuff and the jargon, but we make it too complicated the other way. Like you mentioned before, what the pro
Sure.
cons, we make it really complex. As if we just understand a little bit about human development and human evolution, actually make, like I said before, like it's made my life easy as a coach because that's just human behavior. Like it to me, it's easier, but again, I do have bias a little bit, but it makes it easier. I don't think it is complicated. I think we make it more complicated. And again, see what Armstrong said himself. Like it's like because they've learned a language, they're now trying to relearn a new language. Yesterday with those level ones, it's their first day. If I sprinkle some ecological dynamics in there, it's day one. That's all they know then. So then they just see that as good coaching. As in tennis, I don't know about other sports, we leave ecological dynamics, skill acquisition to like the top levels, to like the level 5 in tennis. But by that point, you've already got lots of confirmation and survivorship bias. So it's really hard to change. So it goes back to what we said at the start of the recording. Now, when I'm working with coaches, I'm looking at the young coaches, because if I can get you interested and spark your curiosity early on, that's better than trying to change someone who's 40 years in, basket feeding and suffering, because they're not going to change because there's so much bias there. And fair play, you've got some survivorship bias. And for me, it's just, we shouldn't be leaving this stuff to experienced coaches. If anything, it makes it easier. Create an environment, a lot easier than trying to understand ground reaction force and shoulder over shoulder rotation. Just let the body cartwheel itself. It's fine.
Yeah, there's something Stu said when we talked was like, yeah, it's really not that complicated if you haven't already started with a preconception of what techniques are, right? If you start without that, then it's just really the whole thing is more intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you start with it that we've got to go into the dynamics of like self-organization to explain why it's not a motor program, and then hence why we need to think about more adaptability than ideal perfect pattern, right? So maybe as we start to close up here, certainly if you think there's anything really important that I haven't asked, let me know.
No, it's been good.
But one thing that would be, I think, really great is for a lot of coaches, students, movers, people in general listening, what are some that maybe they don't have any experience in tennis, or certainly not from a constraints-led approach, I think. So for those people, what are some kind of foundational tasks that would be really good for them to do? And I'll say tasks kind of like loosely, that maybe in a way that also includes like environmental manipulations, things like the different balls.
Good question. I think for me, if I start to work with players, I'm guessing we're talking like a beginner level here, like completely brand new. So again, the misconception is they can't do anything. So you've got to get them throwing and catching. And I'm like, well, we don't throw and catch in tennis. Like for me, why are we throwing and catching? So the first thing I do with any beginner generally is what is I call two-touch tennis. So I hit the ball to you, you control it with the racket, you push it up, ball bounces and you send it back. So I start with that for two reasons. Number one, helps you it's the perception action coupling. It also then starts to get you a rougher idea of Tau. Yeah, because it's time to contact. Also gives you an awareness of the racket in relation to your body. Because if you make contact close, the ball will spin off really quick because the racket face will open. So you've got to start getting the racket away from the body. So when you touch it, it goes straight up in the air and it's controlled. So all those things, Tau and awareness and the racket and sort of body relationship, just two-touch tennis. And it's really interesting because like when you ever start that with beginner, the first few minutes is chaos. Like they're touching, the ball's flying off everywhere. They're smacking the ball out. But then they start to collaborate. They start to become attuned to the information. Then they start getting really good. And then I might go to, okay, Now 2 bounce tennis. Oh, okay. Why 2 bounces? Because in tennis, you're only allowed 1. Yeah. Ignore me. I'm crazy. Just carry on. With 2 bounces, most players, when they first play, they understand the basic principle of tennis is hitting the ball. The issue is they run straight to the ball. So they run and end up playing like this, and they get jammed up. There's no spatial awareness and the relationship between the body and ball. To strike a ball, the ball needs to be out in front of you. So by getting the ball to bounce twice, I'm getting you to move away from the bounce. And now I'm getting you to work on the perception action of, okay, the ball and getting your body away from the ball. And then I would say, okay, well, if it lands in the service box, which is a box closer to the net, you're only allowed 1 bounce. If it goes past the service box, now it bounces 2. So I'm just layering up the information like we talked about before. So we start off with 2 touches. Now it's 2 bounces. Now it's 1 bounce or 2 bounces. Then I'll give you the option. Well, in this point, you can now have 2 touches or you can have 1 touch. And when you take 1 touch, okay, why did you take 1 touch then? What did it feel like? I felt I was comfortable. I felt I was balanced. That's good. That's good information. So I just start with an understanding. We would look at it as Tao, but just working on that perception action coupling between the body, the racket and the environment and the ball. And just by manipulating those little simple games, just builds that perception action coupling really quick. And I guarantee by the end of the session, you're playing after 1 bounce and you're rallying. And I did it with a young girl the other week who's never played before. And by the end of the session, she's jamming me and stretching me and playing. And we literally did that whole progression, which I just talked through. Because I just want to bring her attention to relevant information. Your body, the racket, the ball, the environment. Didn't tell her any of that. Because just gamify it. It's just in a game. Like, she doesn't need to know what Tao is. I didn't even know what Tao is. Yeah, but I know it's time to contact. But it's just understanding the relationship. And that's much more effective than saying, well, if the ball bounces this height and this speed, it's going to land here. What does that mean? Like, this little girl's got no concept of any of that. So that's sort of my first lesson experience. Because again, you're playing the game. It may not look like Wimbledon final, but it's never going to look like a Wimbledon final. It's looking at your level where you are today. And for me, they're the sort of basic foundational skills. It's just, okay, learn to understand the environment, the ball, and your position in it, and where you are in that world and how you can interact.
This is so great. And it's really interesting. So in jiu-jitsu, I feel like I'm starting to become like a bit of a radical on the side of representativeness. I think almost every coach, other than Cal Jones maybe, is constraining way too much. And they're doing these like very isolated situations. And then in those isolated situations, they're constraining it so that both people can only do the most optimal thing. So like they're doing a pin, and then it's like, okay, the top player can only advance to a certain position and the bottom player can only escape, or they can escape or they can sweep, so they can get on top. And it's like, yes, those are generally the lowest hanging fruit, the easiest things to do there. But when you start constraining it so that that's the only thing people can do, well, that's the only thing they're going to learn. And what's really interesting about that is we're doing submission grappling, and now we've removed submissions from submission grappling, and people still think it's a good idea, that even the ones that kind of understand ecological dynamics. And I'm just like, what? This is crazy, you know? So let's just keep the information present. And it's really nice that it sounds like in tennis, you're doing a very similar thing, which is, I could imagine people could be like really isolating. Okay, let's do like top spin. Let's do like all the different, like, that's what I'm seeing a lot of right now is people have moved on from techniques to like a better definition of skill. But then they're like, okay, let's just use tasks to develop that wider skill of like, what is pinning? What is escaping? What is sweeping? And we isolate that. So we can force you to work on, that's the only way you can win. And maybe it's not a terrible idea to do that once in a while.
Mhm.
But when that's the majority of your practice tasks, I think people really, really miss out on being able to develop more creative solutions. And it sounds like you're on that side as well. Is that right? That you're really like letting people, you score the point. Yeah.
Yeah, massively. And for me, when I look at that representative learning design, I'm always up towards the top end. Like if you scale it 1 to 10, I'm never going below a 7.
Yeah.
I always want to be that top end.
I think that's the best way to do it. Like, and I think you gave a great example of like when to go lower is like, okay, if they're beginners and maybe they can't like really serve it all that great, or maybe they definitely can't serve it and then have the other person return it. Well, maybe, yeah, just give them 2 touches rather than doing a rally business or like, yeah, just hit it against the wall 300 times. It's more representative to say like, let's just give you 2 touches to get it back. And then we get back up that spectrum of representativeness as soon as possible.
And it's really quick. So if you go if you bring it back, let's say to a 6, you can get to a 10 quite quick. But if you go all the way back to a 1, and most sports coaches, not just tennis, the belief is you start at 1 and you go to, and then you work your way up to 10. I'm like, no, no, you don't have to start at 1. And that I always try and keep the game there. The game has to be there. Whether it's not fully representative's fine, but there has to be like, I mentioned throwing and catching. In tennis, throwing and catching is huge, especially with juniors, because the assumption is if you can throw, you can strike a ball. But my idea is, well, catching and throwing are not striking. It's different affordances. It's different skill.
You're talking about throwing and catching with your hand.
Yeah. So if you go to any tennis lesson, here in the UK especially, half the lesson will be throwing and catching with hands.
No.
Because the idea, again, schema theory, Smith, whatever, okay, we'll build up these functional skills and then we layer stuff on. And I'm like, throwing does not translate to striking. Like, different affordances, it's a different skill. So you're wasting time. And I watched a lesson recently at a club where I was visiting, and it was an under 8 session. And the coach, again, doing what they know and the best they can do. And they're working on these fundamental throwing and catching. 3 times in the session, the kids go to get their rackets. 3 times the coach says, no, we need to work on the basics.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, these kids have come to play tennis and they've not touched the racket yet. So most tennis lessons will start off both throwing, 1 throwing, 1 catching, 1 throwing, 1 striking, hitting. And maybe both with rackets at the end if you've got time. And we wonder why then we put the rackets in these kids' hands. There's no skill transfer. Because they've been practicing throwing and catching. They're great at cricket or baseball, if we use a North American game. Like, they're great at throwing and catching. They can't strike a ball. But that goes back into using things like schema theory of, okay, we build skill up and we'll layer it on. I'm like, no, let's just play. Like, just play. It may be non-representative. Like, I might play on the floor with a 4-year-old. Like, we play floor tennis. Like, there's no bounce involved, but we still have a boundary. We still have like a 2 cones, which is the net and the ball has to cross. It's not representative, but the game's still there. It's still perception action. It's still me trying to hit the ball away from you. And then we can start from there. But again, the misconception is, no, we have to start at a 1. We have to start with throwing and catching. And I'm like, no, I'll start at a 7. And I've had this bet and no one's taken me up on it yet. If we have like 2 players, one coach trains them in a very traditional way and I train them in an ecological way, my player will win every time. Because just the representation of the lessons is different. Like, I never go to a 1 because I just don't, I mentioned before, basket, I don't see the value. I've not seen a situation yet where I've gone, I have to completely decouple this from the environment for some reason. I always try and find a better way. And that's not me being big-headed or look at me, I'm amazing. It's like, well, no, why do I need to go lower than the 7? That's what the representative scale is there for. And if I had my way, it wouldn't be 1 to 10. It'll be, you don't go below a 7. That's not an option. Like, because there's no point. Like, as a coach, you shouldn't go below a 7. really. There's no reason to. But it goes back, I think, a lot of it to confidence. I think we're in a position now where we know a lot of the science and the research, and we've tried it out with players. So we're quite comfortable in that situation. Whereas I think if you go to a lesson, you can't hit a ball, coaches just panic. So they strip away all the rich information and then they go back into the throwing and catching because it looks easy and it kind of makes sense, I guess, if you're believing that sort of way of skill development.
It's something maybe that I've been a little bit blessed with coming from the movement perspective. That I've just seen over and over and over in every context you could imagine how little transfer we get from different skills that are even the ones that are related, even the ones that we try to make them as related as possible. And God damn it, transfer is still so low. And so that's what really drives me to the same thing you're saying. Like, we got to keep the representativeness really high as much as possible. And if you're really looking out for it and a little bit of creativity, problem solving, I don't think you have to really go below a 7. And so this other thing with direct learning that I feel like if you understand direct learning, then you have to understand why we're, on this radical side of like super high representativeness is like for instance, if you're playing tennis without a racket, anything you're doing that you're calling tennis without a racket, there is information that you're going to need when there's a racket that is not there. You cannot attune to it whatsoever. How could you possibly learn that? Right? Like, so maybe you could attune to the other things, but there are informational variables that are going to be critically, not just important, critically important, that you cannot have any education of attention or intention in relation to. That is a big, big problem.
Yeah, that's tennis coaching. And like, even like from the coach education that I deliver for National Governing Body, it's in there still. Like the importance of throwing, and it's like these fundamental movement skills. Yeah, throwing and catching and jumping, they are important skills. And there are elements of it in tennis, but without the racket, it's irrelevant. Like, you can be the greatest. Like, I see it a lot. Like, you can see some really good athletes come to tennis lessons, put a racket in their hand, they look like they're a discoordinated giraffe, because that racket changes everything. Because it's a different affordance, it's a different skill. And when you present that to coaches and parents and even players, it doesn't make sense to them. Because again, they've been taught of this idea of walking leads into running, but we know from introduction to ecological psychology, walking's closer to leaping. Running's closer to leaping than it is actually walking. It's not. It may look similar, but it's not the same skill. It's different, and people don't understand that because again, they're not educated on that. It's a very top down view of this leads to this and this leads to this. A very linear process, whereas we look at it. Well, I look at it definitely. It's a coupled. It's a skill, and it's contextual. And if I need all the information, that's going to be there again in the match, no matter what the level. If it's 2 6-year-olds, the game doesn't change. It's still tennis. There's still a net and a ball and 2 rackets. Crazy.
Awesome. So, 2 last things. So 1, like I say, someone goes through that progression. So 2 touch tennis, 2 bounce tennis, and then 1 bounce if it's in the service box, 2 touches or 1 touch. What's the direction after that?
A lot of that then is goes back to, okay, well, let's just start making sure that you can. It depends on the context as well. So for me, I mentioned before, it's the level you're playing at. So once we get to that level, you'll start hitting the ball quicker. I'll start hitting the ball quicker. So therefore, you've got to adapt now. You'll then start to see opportunities start hitting with spin. I'll start hitting with spin. So I'm always constantly matching the level that you're attuning to and reaching. And that's where it never stops evolving and never stops adapting. But it's constantly changing. So it's things like there's a move called the split step in tennis. I don't know if you're familiar with a split step. Basically where you split your stance and get your weight on the balls of your feet so you can move. It's classed as a fundamental movement in tennis, and you're meant to teach it from day one. The issue is Most tennis environments don't afford a split step because a split step's only needed when you're moving at speed and the ball's coming quick. And there's a great clip of John McEnroe playing recently in France. Not a single split step. Why? Because the environment doesn't invite him to split step. Now, so I use that as an example because at some point, once the game starts getting quicker, you're going to have to start now split stepping. But what will happen is you'll start naturally doing it because you're going to have to shift your body weight and you're going to have to get the weight from off your heels onto the front part of your foot. And if it doesn't happen naturally, I might bring your attention to it. And that's where then people think like we don't look at biomechanics. I don't look at biomechanics and stuff. No, I'm aware of how the body can move, but I've got to make sure the environment invites it. And that's what's great about tennis because it's so dynamic. There's no end point. You don't complete tennis ever because there's always a different level or a different sort of place you can get to. That's why the top players still have coaches, I guess, because they're still looking for those little bit of improvements because the game changes. Every level you reach, the demands change because your opponent changes. So a long-winded answer there, but like for me, it's starting off on that basic awareness of the environment. And then there's going to be more challenges, different spins, different paces. And then you've got to then adapt your movement to it. And that will include things like a split step. But it's like at under 8, you don't need to split step because the ball's slow and the court's really small. So you don't need to split step. But we teach it. So therefore you have these kids jumping 4 feet in the air and landed on the floor, completely flat-footed. And then the ball zings past him. But they do a good split step. And I'm like, no, you probably split step when you get to under 9, under 10s. And the great thing is you don't even have to teach it because the game will demand it. And I had a great conversation with a coach who I mentor about top spin. So top spin is where you strike the ball from low to high and you get the ball to spin forwards. And he was saying that he was working with this adult player and he can't get him to hit with top spin. He's tried everything. He's tried basket feeding, drop feeding, representative learning design. And I'm like, well, if he's going back to his club with his mates and there's no opportunities to hit with topspin, 1, he doesn't need it. And 2, he's not going to develop it because there's no opportunities for him to develop it. So why are you teaching him topspin? You're wasting everyone's time. And it's like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? And if you watch the guy play, he hits everything flat. And if you watch his 3 mates, they're all hitting the ball flat. If you put that player on a court with me and I hit with topspin, he's now going to have invitations to hit with topspin because the environment affords it. And as a coach, that's why I said before, halfway through the podcast, is like, I meet you where you're at, not where I think you need to be. And then when you get to the skill, destabilize you, what do you need next? Okay, now you might need to split step. Now you might need to start generating some spin. But I made the big mistake many years ago as a coach, whereas I'll try and teach all that stuff on day 1. But going back to the guy who I mentored,
Yeah.
But if you go back to your club and you don't have those invitations, those affordances, you won't practice it anyway. It doesn't emerge. Therefore, your attunement isn't there. Therefore, you're not going to hit with topspin. So it's when you say that to coaches, though, it blows their mind because, again, that's classed as a fundamental skill. We have to teach players to hit with topspin because the top players do. Yeah. But then if you watch a low-level club match, there's no topspin because it's not needed at that level. And it's... yeah, so that's that. Hopefully, a very long-winded answer. There's no path of a sense. It's non-linear. It depends on where you're at and where you want to go with it.
And from what I'm hearing, it's sounding like then it goes back to what we were talking about earlier of like, what are these people struggling with, and then how do we?
Yeah, it always goes back to like who you're playing with, where you're playing. Like, tell me about their level. Tell me about your opponent's level, and then I'll try and mimic that as much as possible. And it's funny, right? Because like there's clips online of me playing with a 10-year-old and I'm playing like a 10-year-old and like you get comments going, this guy can't play. I'm like, yeah, it's because I'm trying to make it as representative as possible. One of the biggest, like I hate private lessons, which is weird in tennis because private lessons are generally the holy grail. I hate them because they're not representative because I can't play like a 10-year-old. It's really hard. I try my best. I'll use the grip, I'll use the shape, but I still think like a 42-year-old and people think, oh, this guy can't play. But then when I play with my older players and they're better than me, he can play a little bit now. And it's weird because people look at me with the kids and they make this assumption that, oh, he can't play tennis. Like he's really bad. And this guy's meant to be a coach and he's a international speaker. And like, I'm playing like a 6-year-old because I'm trying to give them the information that they're going to use.
That's great.
It's just weird, but I can hit a tennis ball, apparently. I'm a good 6-year-old, put it that way.
So last thing, so if people are listening and they want to find more about you, say they want to get involved, work with you,
yeah,
where should they go?
All major platforms generally, and it's my tennis coaching. Normally quite proactive on Instagram, LinkedIn, trying to get into YouTube. As you know, YouTube's very, very difficult to get into. It's a lot of effort, a lot of work, but I do find video is being quite powerful now. I think the written word with this stuff is quite difficult to get across in context, whereas video, especially things like this, just chats, are really powerful because it breaks down a lot of the barriers. But yeah, my tennis coaching, feel free to reach out and stuff. I'm more than happy to talk, and not just tennis either. Like I said before, I'm really interested in lots of other sports. I've got lots of jiu-jitsu people following me. Obviously, you met Raf as well in North Wales, I noticed.
Yeah. I was just talking to him.
Yeah, so we talk quite a lot on
Awesome.
Instagram, and he's in the Talent Equation group and stuff. So yeah, I talked a lot to coaches about lots of different stuff. So it's don't feel like it has to be tennis. And I'm curious to try other sports out. I might even try some sumo wrestling. I think you've intrigued me.
You know, the most shocking thing about sumo was like the day before I flew out, I had my fiance like just do some, I was like, I need some practice. Like, will you just do some with me? And she's like 110 pounds. And she had so much fun. We had so much fun doing it. It was so great. So,
Good.
It's more fun than you think. You might enjoy it quite a bit. Awesome.
Listen, it's been amazing speaking to you. As I'm a big fan, hopefully you found it sort of useful and informative. I know I have, and I'll probably go away and make a million notes now. It's quite late here in the UK, but I'll be probably up all night. Keep up all your good work because you're doing some great stuff. Your documentary, by the way, was absolutely amazing. It's blew me away. I shared it with lots of tennis coaches. So yeah, just keep doing what you're doing, spreading the good word, and let's do this again because I've really enjoyed it. Time's flowing by. I didn't realize we've spoken for so long. But yeah, just really appreciate speaking to you, and I know how busy you are. And next time you're in the UK, we'll definitely catch up.
Yes, that'll be great. Thanks so much, Steve.
If you want to learn more about the incredible framework that makes training like this so effective, check out my documentary about it here.